Chapter 48-37. Facing the ugly infant who almost occupied the half of the void, there was no fear in the eyes of the two figures. The blood that was so thick that it could hardly be turned out spit out from the hundreds of heads of the ugly baby. Moreover, Jian Wushuang and Di Qing have been surrounded, hundreds of heads squeezed from each other. In the middle of this blood, he smelled a little unsteady. After a disaster in the Sand Devil's Cave, the sword that is already burdened with cause and effect and the killing robbery, the perception of blood and murder has reached an unprecedented level. He felt that the blood of this ugly infant was very strange and complicated. It could never be a single individual possessed, but was forcibly piled together. Converging his mind, Jian Wushuang burst out 3,000 sword intentions all over his body, and wiped out more than half of his blood. Di Qing also moved. Without using Baoxiang, he stretched out his hand and smashed dozens of close heads easily. With the cooperation of the two of them, almost a dozen of breaths, they slaughtered over 100 heads of ugly infants and children together with their bodies. But without waiting for Jian Wushuang to close his hand, the broken blood sky, those residues suddenly gathered together again, and formed the appearance of an ugly infant. He laughed excitedly. Ji Jie. I have 100 lives, how did you kill it? The harder you are, the deeper you will fall into this blood, and finally you will not be obedient to become my nourishment. The thing, Qing whispered in a low voice, and then took a step forward, suddenly shaking his arms. Suddenly thousands of golden feathers emerged, and each one shot down with a big momentum. The blood void was punctured, and there were shocking cracks. The ugly baby boy smiled, looked at the advent of Jin Yu, and hurriedly manipulated the grape-like head behind him to resist. But he apparently underestimated the meaning of ditching and overestimated himself. The golden feather with a ruinous breath burned the blood void, and directly nailed it into a sieve. Another death. But this is a permanent cure, but it really didn't happen for a moment. The ugly baby boy's figure appeared again, and he roared angrily. After this brief confrontation, Jian Wushuang apparently did not intend to fight anymore. It would be quite tricky if he had to kill nearly 100 times, as he said. This leaves the sun with time to correct and can do many things. At that time, if they want to escape again, I am afraid it will be very difficult. After all, to be able to send 5 masters of Yang Yang and 2 masters of Yang Yang to the assassinator who assassinated Master Mo in the north of Changxianzhu will never stop here. After glancing at He Ditching, Jian Wushuang took the lead to leave. Di Qing also made a move with both hands, directly condensing a golden enchantment, so as to block the eroded blood, and then flew away. The ugly infant boy screamed in anger, but he did not dare to step forward, only to manipulate the rich blood to erode the void. Just when Jian Wushuang felt that he had escaped from danger, the void became steep red again. The bone mirror reappeared again, and as the rich red orn fell to the extreme, dozens of figures were scrambled out of the mirror. When the white bones in the ragged robes were old, the halberd fingers screamed, and a huge amount of dynamism rushed out of the bag around his waist. Another Yang Xian roared with 2 heads, holding 2 great hammers in his hand, and threw the giant hammer in his hand in the face of Jian Wushuang. 10 weird and ugly Yang Xian walked out of the mirror and blocked their way together. Sword without a double-faced color side, lifted his palm and held it in the air. Suddenly the flying giant hammer came to a stop in the void, and then shattered. We're afraid we can't walk away now, he said with a deep voice. 11 bodies surrounded him. These Yangxian from the bone mirror are far more tricky and powerful than ordinary Yangxian. Various spells emerge endlessly, and it is very possible to master the fairy style. Because there was a fight with the sun in the previous heaven, the sword Wushuang at this moment needs to hide the iconic fairy style as much as possible. Although the figure of Gongzi's correction is unknown at this moment, Jian Wushuang can feel him hiding in a dark place and may appear at any time. The 11 Yangxian, who looked strange and ugly, and exuded eccentric energy, rushed towards him without any stay. Jian Wushuang no longer hesitated, the long sword in his palm exuded the momentum, startled with infinite sword. Xingyi Hujianjianyi, Bloom, Fatty Yangxian, who looks like a butcher at the forefront, first ran into it, and was directly swallowed by the sword of the Xinghe Lake. The remaining old bones, old lanterns and other Yangxian did not have time to dodge, and were all involved. As Jian Wushuang's strongest swordsmanship, His strongest swordsmanship is revealed at this moment. Even if these Yangxian have strange, but after all did not jump out of Yangxian's scope. Under Dianxian, the sword is unparalleled. This thick sword like Tianhe made the Qing aside, and this guy who was just the peak of Yangxian brought him an inexplicable threat. When the sword's intention dissipated, all 11 eccentric and ugly Yangxian disappeared, and even a little dross remained. Under the broken void, it finally slowly condensed the shape of an ugly baby boy. Except for him, the rest of the Yangxian all died. But within a short period of time, he even lost his life, and he dared not step forward. Jian Wushuang apparently didn't want to engage in this meaningless and hidden fight, and left Qingqing quickly. The void is broken, the heavens are completely collapsed, everything is shrouded in the tumultuous blood, everything including the sight is twisted. There was a ripple in the void, and then the younger son walked out of it, and the bone mirror suspended in the sky fell back into his hand. Seeing the ugly baby, he stepped back subconsciously and looked at him in horror. "Big, master." "Incompetent waste," the son said softly, carrying his hands on his shoulders. "Is it all arranged?" Going back to adults, blood must have blinded their eyes and made them confused. The ugly infant grinned. The young man gave him a look. "It's a good job. When the matter is over, you can choose a few more fairy bones to nourish." "Thank you, Lord." He grinned, revealing his eyes in disguise. After a few breaths of time, he escaped from the covered by blood. Jian Wushuang and Di Qing both breathed out. Without Yangxian keeping up, the gloomy sense of oppression disappeared, and the son's correction did not keep up. "Leave here first, then make plans later." Jian Wushuang made the decision. Gongzisheng has discovered their existence, and the entire Dmitri will be in martial law for the next period of time. I am afraid that it will be more difficult to find the silver bell with the sky-shaped bone armor. Chapter 48-38. I don't know if it was an illusion or the discomfort after the battle. Jian Wushuang felt that the sky in front of him seemed to be covered with a faint layer of red yarn, and even slightly distorted his sight. This is not a good sign. He stopped staying and took Tianqing directly away from the heavenly prison plane, away from the heavenly palace, and went to Degu Mountain for a short break. But in the next moment, Jian Wushuang was shocked by everything in his eyes. I saw that all the heavenly planes were broken, all the fairy mountains collapsed, and the Tianhe suspended in the clouds like a silver ribbon was also cut off. The sky dome is extremely dark, lowering the endless flames, burning all visible objects, and entering the sky is no longer half intact. The vast expanse of sky composed of more than 20 heavens, 17 fairy mountains, and 6 blessed lands is irreparably destroyed. It took a while for Jian Wushuang to recover, looking at the destruction of the scene under the eyes, still a little unbelievable. He whispered softly, "Who has such energy and can cause such a degree of damage to Domitian in such a short time?" But Di Qing showed a meaningful expression. It seems that none of the people under Zhen Wuyang are waiting for leisure. Da Mitian suddenly suffered such a degree of damage. Jian Wushuang began to be calm in her heart. Yinling will definitely leave Da Mitian again, and then it is almost impossible to find her again. Thinking of this, Jian Wushuang hurried to the direction of Degu Mountain. With the blessings of Yinyan Shan He, it was only a few breaths before returning to Dagu Shan. But the Degu Mountain at this moment has already been destroyed. The entire fairy mountain was cut off to the middle position, and countless lotus flowers were also burned by the sky fire. And from that small hole in the sky, spitting thick black ink. Jian Wushuang's dark path was not good, and his figure came to the broken hole in a flash. I saw that in the dark sky, there was a giant man with gold belt and armor, which was several feet tall. Even Chen Qing appeared thin in front of him. The giant man was smoky with black smoke all over his body, showing the strength of Yangxian Peak, sitting deep in the sky like a hill. And the entire day of the cave was filled with clicks, and the sound of chewing appeared strange. Perhaps the stranger was aware of it, and the giant man slowly turned his head, a huge wild boar head reflected in Jian Wushuang's eyes. The giant man actually had a wild boar head, and there were 2 fierce long teeth in his beak, a delicate thigh was hung on the left tooth, and a head with round eyes was pierced on the right tooth. And beside him, all the broken wreckage. Shi Chinki's head is gone, Wei Lujia's head is strung on his long teeth, and Zhao Ting's head has been eaten by most of it. None of them survived. Looking at the terrifying corpse on the ground, Zhen Wushuang was irritated. He directly condensed an invisible long sword and cut it towards the giant. The giant man sitting cross-legged on the ground was not afraid at all, even with a bit of surprise. "Nine brother, you will be back so soon." A strange scene happened. Zhen Wushuang's sword spirit even crossed him, slashed to the side wall, and completely shattered the winter. Throwing away the half-eaten Zhao Ting's head, the giant man got up quickly and hurried towards Zhen Wushuang. "Nine brother, why did you come back so quickly? Did the task that big brother handed you complete?" Zhen Wushuang retreated a few steps, his long sword pointed straight at him, and said in a deep voice, "Who are you? Why did you kill them?" "Nine brother, you are confused, I am your third brother." The giant man with a wild boar's head scratched his head and said, "Kill them? It's just a group of small miscellaneous deities. Our purpose is far more than that here. The eldest brother, they have gone to the city and looted the ground. Presumably it will not take long, and here will be our 9 brothers." Zhen Wushuang heard the words, frowned, and was a little uncertain for a while. Was this guy having a problem with his brain, calling a stranger to Zhu Di? "Do you know me?" he tentatively asked. "You are my 9th brother, of course I know." Yuhan said, "Is the task assigned to you by your elder brother completed?" At this point, Zhen Wushuang was still a little puzzled, but he continued quietly and said, "All the things that have been completed have been completed." "That's good, now let's go to the big brother," and they meet together. After the words, the giant man put the pig's teeth on the thigh of the cleaning pool, and the head of Wei Liujia into the mouth, chewing, and outward. "Go!" Zhen Wushuang turned his head to look at it, and had always been close to him. He had nowhere to go, and he was the only one left. Looking at the wreckage, he sighed and buried everything with his hand. Stepping on the broken sky, the ruined scene is still going on, with the sky fire of destruction, burning all the souls. Everything is so unreal, but weird. The creatures in each side of the heavens wailed and then annihilated, and the dark air covered everything. The tycoon in charge of chewing, slurping again and again, confused, said, "9 brothers, what are we doing here? I sent it to create our own world. Look here, it will be ours soon." The sword has no two-sided color and no fluctuation. He began to feel something is wrong. All the diffusive forces around the body fluctuated and showed a unique gray-white color. All of this is like some kind of illusion or dream. "What are you stupid, 9 brothers? Let's build a world of our own here, and continue to expand on this basis," Yuhan said happily. Zhen Wushuang suddenly felt a bit dizzy, and the surrounding pictures were beating, and it changed from gray and white to a rainbow of colors, and everything was constantly magnifying and beating. "Sir, why are you here? It really makes Liujia easy to find." Suddenly Wei Liujia's chewed head suddenly came out of the giant's beak and looked at Zhen Wushuang with a weird smile. Immediately afterwards, Shi Qingqi's head and Zhao Ting's head came out together, shouting to him scramblingly, "Admiral help, adult help." Zhen Wushuang's head became more and more painful, and he could not even think about the simplest. The giant man stretched out his palms and pressed those heads back into his mouth again, with a concerned expression. "9 brothers, are you okay? From the moment you came back, I can see that you are a bit wrong. Everything is so strange, everything is so absurd. Don't come close to me," Zhen Wushuang whispered. He endured the growing pain in his mind. But then, the grotesque picture suddenly changed. Chapter 48-39. The broken sky dome and the destroyed great sky disappeared, replaced by a vast palace. The bursting pain in Zhen Wushuang's mind suddenly disappeared, and everything became clear. But the only thing that hasn't changed is the giant man with a wild boar head still standing beside him. This time, besides this pig-headed giant, Zhen Wushuang was also standing with 7 figures, all of whom were ugly and distorted, bloated or strong. A total of 8 figures, each holding a tray covered in red cloth. "9 brother, you have made great achievements in this battle against the sky, just wait for the big brother's reward." The giant man with the wild boar head touched Wushuang Wusho, and whispered. Zhen Wushuang didn't pay attention to him, but looked at the tray that was out of nowhere when he didn't know when. The tray was covered with red cloth, and there was a fist-sized protrusion in the middle, and it was beating slightly. He stretched out his hand and tried to lift it, but was interrupted by a thick voice. "Come in." As this remark fell, it seemed that there was an irresistible force in Mingming that pushed Jian Wushuang forward. He frowned, but realized that he could not resist, and he could only let that force push forward. Xinbu stepped into the giant hall, and the scene before him made Jian Wushuang's brow furrowed. This is an evil palace. The entire vast hall is concave in the middle, and there are countless corpses stacked in it, and there are no fewer than 100,000 broken and clean corpses. On top of these corpses, there is a huge mountain-like figure, which has no face, and it can hardly be described by creatures, just like the silhouettes formed by various creatures being squeezed together. "Have seen Big Brother." The remaining 7 figures shouted in unison, and at the same time stretched out the tray in their respective hands. The mountain-like figure did not respond, and was still silent, as if waiting for something. The giant man who was closest to Jian Wushuang looked around for a while, and then reached up and opened the red cloth on the tray in his hand. "Brother, please enjoy, this yangxian taste is different from what we have eaten." The red cloth was lifted, and a closed head was revealed. Jian Wushuang was horrified, and I saw the head, but it was the head of the Qing who disappeared. He looked again at the tray in his hand and reached out to slowly lift the red cloth over it. A bright heart is beating faintly, it is the source of the fairy. No, how could he die inexplicably? This must be an illusion. Jian Wushuang thought to himself. At this time, the mountain body sitting on the countless gods moved. He waved a long distance, directly ingested the head of Di Qing, stuffed it into his mouth, and chewed. The space seemed to be still. The mountain body stopped moving. After a while, he raised his arms and rolled up the body of the Qing in the remaining trays one by one. But when it was Jian Wushuang's turn, he suddenly grasped the essence of Qing in his palm, before he was swept away. "Nine brother, what are you doing? This is dedicated to the boss," Yuhan said anxiously, and he had to reach out to take the fairy sauce in his hand. Jian Wushuang smiled coldly, his figure straight backed a few feet, and said coldly, "When will it be installed? Should this illusion be broken? Should I destroy it?" Several giants were all stunned. "What are you talking about, Brother Nine? What illusion?" "I'm your third brother." The giant man with a wild boar's head looked worried and surprised. At this moment, the space suddenly oscillated and the dome of the palace shattered. Hundreds of thousands of strands of Chinese orns shine through the broken gap, and a large golden scale claw appears, covering the top of Jian Wushuang's head. Sword Wushuang saw it, and took a breath, and his figure followed the golden scale claws. But at this time, the huge mountain body moved. He suddenly waved his arm and smashed it, surpassing the power of Yangxian Burst. He was shocked that if the strike was in the middle, it would definitely be hit hard. The imaginary scene did not appear. The golden scale claws completely wrapped the sword Wushuang, and blocked the blow. The whole palace instantly shattered, and even with all the pictures began to collapse. Nine brothers. When Jian Wushuang opened his eyes again, the familiar scene appeared. Heavenly prison has completely fallen, and the void is enveloped by a kind of blood gauze, and he is still standing on the spot, and has just made a gesture of escape. Di Qing was beside him, looking at him with raised eyebrows. Jian Wushuang swallowed the throat subconsciously. "I thought I had a dream just now." When Qingwen then explained slowly, "Strictly speaking, that is not a dream, not even a fantasy." What kind of place was that just now?" He was puzzled. Di Qing slowly raised the corner of his mouth. "If I tell you that is a possible situation in the future?" Jian Wushuang was stunned, and was somewhat stunned. "That is to say, what I just experienced is not false, but real, and it may happen. It can be said, but it's not correct. It's a bit complicated, including I can't fully explore it." Di Qing said, "But there is one thing I can be sure, that everything I just experienced is based on fantasy, is a world that should not have appeared, but was created, and is about to move towards reality." Jian Wushuang frowned, and Di Qing said it was very complicated and contained a considerable amount of information, which was equivalent to explaining the psychedelic scene just now from the source. But he didn't believe it anyway. The scene of Fang Cai would be possible in the future. "Actually, we were confused from the beginning. Di said quietly. The blood energy has a psychedelic effect. I am afraid that if you are ordinary Yangxian, you can't escape. But he obviously underestimated us would leave such a gap so carelessly. He said, waved his hand, and directly cleared the blood of his body. Hundreds of babies and children emerged quietly, and they kept retreating. As he appeared, there was another ripple in the void, and the gentleman in a long gown slowly walked out slowly. It's really amazing. It seems that all those who can come to visit me as a guest are first-class players. The younger man wondered if there was something wrong, and caused the dissatisfaction of the two people before he came to demission as a guest. Jian Wushuang did not want to confront him, lowering his voice and saying, "We just passed by here, had no intention of enemies, and left after a while." The son corrected the news and slightly raised the corner of his mouth. "Oh, is it just passing by?" Presumably, the pill in the hands of Wei Liujia, the master of Xianshan Mountain, has nothing to do with the two, and the destruction of Heavenly Prison has nothing to do with the two. Jian Wushuang no longer spoke, the palm of his hand had condensed the sword in tension, and waited for the young man to correct the difficulty. He immediately started. Chapter 4840. However, Gong Zizheng didn't seem to have a plan, but looked at Jian Wushuang with interest. Then he slowly reached out his palm. 50 pills, I will let you go. Jian Wushuang's eyes are slightly condensed. 50 Depindan pills are not worth mentioning to him, even if he is 500, he can get them. After all, Chuanqiu is already full in the Nawa nearly 1,000 pills of different efficacy. 50 Danmaru swords can be thrown by Wushuang naturally, but he does not intend to hand over any of them. Judging by the prince's mentality, once he surrenders, he will never let them go, but will set himself on fire. So Jian Wushuang is ready to fight. I don't know what Danmaru is, and I can't give it to you. Gong Zizheng would obviously expect this kind of answer. His tone was not in a hurry. It seemed to be fixed. My big celestial body is already heavily guarded. Outsiders want to enter almost impossible things. I want to come to you. It should have come from Baitianu. Now Baitianu has also been blocked. I'm afraid your retreat is gone. As he spoke, a ray of strong and violent light glanced from the Sifang sky dome, surrounding Jian Wushuang and Di Qing Tuan Tuan. Jian Wushuang just swept away, and then guessed that there were nearly 100 Yangxian, and his face looked dignified for a while. Nearly 100 Yangxian, I am afraid that it is all the power under the sun's correction. It is an unimaginable force of terror. Even if he realized the immortal sword Wushuang, he could not compete with such a force. However, with the help of the Qing dynasty, he thinks that it is still possible to withdraw from the whole body, unless there is a big Yangxian under the sun. It seems that in order to confirm Jian Wushuang's conjecture, the two whole bodies were wrapped in large black robes, and there was no sly body shape with half of the strength and energy overflowing. His gaze narrowed, and the two mysterious figures were exactly the same as those of the two Dian immortals who had met with Qing Qing in Beishangshangxia. See you again, two great Yangxian. Two visitors, if you insist on leaving and leave nothing, I am afraid you will not be able to bear the consequences. Young master shrugged slightly, his eyes suddenly became sharper, and at the same time a dark and extreme sword condensed from his palm. A total of nearly 100 Yangxian, surrounded by two great Yangxian, is unimaginable. This is the first time that Jian Wushuang came to Dianhuan to face the tyranny. It also made him know how terrible the details of the sun's correction were. Then the voice of Di Qing passed into his consciousness, and fight and retreat, everything has me to understanding. A burst of tremendous strength suddenly burst out, the black robe fluttering between the dances, Jian Wushuang Jiao Qing's arms, and a magnificent heavenly gate breaking through the chaotic sky dome, just like the same glorious daylight. The Tianmen slowly opened, and a giant finger fell from it. All Yangxian was stunned, and he was frowned with his son. He didn't expect it anyway. At this moment, they both dare to take the lead. Well, I really don't know how to write dead word. He sneered, pointing his black sword in his hand, cut off my limbs and capture them alive. All Yangxian moved, but not forward, but to avoid the blow that landed on the sky dome. Chuanjie Tianmen is an ancestor technique. As Jian Wushuang's sentiment becomes deeper, the excavation of this ancestor technique has also reached the top. Although the ancestor technique is still useful, the face of Yangxian has already shown fatigue. If the user is not Jianshuang Shuang, the effect will be greatly reduced. A type of power realm, let the four immortals who attempted to fight against each other directly burst the immortal source and die. There were a few heavy hits, and the encirclement circle had some disturbances. Di Qing immediately broke up, and he directly confronted the two black-robed Dian immortals. His palms seemed to be flattened, but contained a full blow of Zhujuan Dian immortals. Seeing these two black-robed Dianxian, they also tried to resist. In an instant, billions of strands of Huamang burst out of the confrontation, and the unparalleled martyrdom swept up directly. Di Qing was still standing still, but the two Dian immortals stepped back at the same time, and their eyes under the black robe showed incredible eyes. All the palms under the black robe tremble uncontrollably. The prince, who was originally watching the game, was shocked when he saw that scene. The power of one blow made both Dianxian lose. Who is he? Di Qing's face was disdainful. The two areas are just guys of Dian immortal, trying to resist him? Leave it all. I haven't beheaded Dian immortal for a while. He loosened his muscles and looked forward. The war broke out. With one sword out, the sword Wushuang was like a ghost, and his figure was simply neat. He held an invisible long sword, and as if entering a land of no one, even facing the siege of nearly 50 Yangxian, he was not afraid. Both shoulders are bound together, and one sword pushes millions. He is proud, with the blessings of immortality, even if he is seriously traumatized, he can recover in a very short time. One thing about his fairy body, Zhen Wushuang never said to the outside world, that is, he has no fairy source. The so-called immortal source, similar to Dantian, is the foundation of all bodies, and the road of practice is condensed after the cultivation of the position of immortality. It is extremely important. But Zhen Wushuang does not have the so-called fairy source, and the immortal fairy transformed by super-perfect life form has nothing in it. This has both advantages and disadvantages. The advantage is that he has nothing important to defend in particular, and the disadvantage is due to the lack of immortal sources. He is extremely insensitive to Dianhuan's avenues and can only be explored slowly. One sword smashed a fairy source, Zhen Wushuang covered it with another palm, and expanded the encircling circle by a few points. So far, Yu is reading www.ukanshu.com. This encircling circle composed of nearly 100 Yangxian and 2 Dianxian has a tendency to collapse. The sun pressed his sword handle tightly, frowning to the extreme. He didn't even think that these two uninvited guests would have such terrible strength. What the are they, thing? Is it sent to kill me? The young man corrected his heart, and suddenly thought of the young son Mo who had died in the northern celestial state. After he thought of this level of association, he became more calm. The two big Yangxian who were originally regarded as the bottom card were forced to retreat at this moment, and it was only a matter of time before they were defeated. Since it's here to kill me, then be prepared to bear the consequences. Gongzi Jiao's eyes grew colder. Under this war, the void could not bear to start to collapse, and the initial crowd of Yangxian, after experiencing panic, also tacitly agreed to start a joint counterattack. Chapter 48-41. In this way, Zhen Wushuang's decline was revealed. The joint force of dozens of Yangxian was terrible after all. The murderous intent of the water swept over and over, making him tired of coping, and his physical strength reached a slight critical point. While dealing with the two great Yangxian, Diqing also endured nearly half of the Yangxian attacks, which was also a bit difficult. Young master gave him a deep look, and then said in a deep voice, "You all go to Changfu Mountain." At the end of the sentence, his body shape disappeared into the vast void soon. After hearing this sentence, Zhen Wushuang felt inexplicably wrong, but he could not escape. A total of dozens of Yangxian tried to hold him down as much as he could. And Di Qing was also blocked by the two Dian immortals, and his body was trapped. In this way, the two of them were deliberately carried forward. The broken void shattered as they moved forward. Changfu Mountain. Consecutive heavens and earth are the oldest existence of the entire dimension. They existed before the concept of dimension. Infinite ink-colored clouds and smoke are surging slowly around Changfu Mountain, which is very impressive. The first sun who rushed here was relieved obviously, and then the corner of his mouth slowly rose. The secret hidden under Changfu Mountain, except for his own knowledge, no one Yang Xian knew. Here is his ultimate hole card. Being carried around, Jian Wushuang also realized that it was wrong, but he couldn't break away at all, and could only move forward with Di Qing. The two Dian immortals also fell directly under Di Qing's terrible offensive. The remaining three-turn Dian immortal, at the final juncture, also destroyed his arm at the cost of completely destroying the foundation of immortal origin. Dian Xian all fell, threats disappeared, facing the situation of less than 70 Yang Xian, Diqing carried out a devastating slaughter. With Yang Xian's demise, this side of the road is in disorder. Jian Wushuang was also shocked to see this scene. The strength displayed by Di Qing was too large. I am afraid that he could subdue him, and only that palm that destroyed the entire northern celestial state Yubo. Although both of them were inevitably brought to Changfu Mountain, none of the nearly Baiyang immortals holding them survive. When the last Yang Xian fell under Jian Wushuang's sword, the broken void left nothing but the remains of the fairy corpse. Waving his hand away from the blood on his hand, Jian Wushuang slowly spit out a breath. Killing nearly 30 Yang Xian is also a big consumption for him. But he did not relax his mind, because there is a unique breath in the heavens. The entire vast sky presents a unique water-white color, just like a splashing ink landscape painting, full of unpredictable unique beauty. Especially in the dark white flowing clouds, there is a Tsongshan, the vast Tsongshan. Di Qing's brows frowned slightly. Where is this place? Why do I have a familiar feeling? Isn't it the old guys who haven't died yet? Jian Wushuang heard the words and looked at him. The old guys who are not dead, aren't they like you? Are they all in the same era as Zhen Wuyang? Of course, but I want to come. Except for those who can't escape the world, I am afraid that I can participate in the war and be able to survive. Di Qing said. With the conversation between the two of them, the sun's correction of the previously disappeared figure emerged quietly again. At this time, his eyes were full of Morin's murderous intention and anger. As his last heritage, the demise of nearly 100 Yang Xian and 2 Dian Xian was an irreparable major loss, which caused him to burn out all his years of accumulation. Looking at both Jian Wushuang and Di Qing, he has already moved to kill. The crimes you have committed are not enough to repay 10,000 death. The sun shook his anger and said, I want to make you suffer so much. As the voice fell, the Changfu Mountain, which fell between the ink-colored clouds, suddenly shuddered. Wisps of water-white huamang scattered from the center of the mountain. As if the sun was shining in the sky, all the drifting clouds were dispersed, revealing the dark and ancient mountains. Along with Hua Mang's reflection, an atmosphere that transcended the times and transcended the ancients filled every inch of space. This kind of breath is extremely unique, so that viewers have a trance illusion. Di Qing's brows became tighter and tighter, and he smelled familiar. When the hundreds of millions of huamang converged in one place, a figure in a long cloud with a flowing cloud and water pattern slowly emerged. It was an old man who didn't need a clean face, and his face was clear and rugged, like the Tsongshan of Yuanzhu Yuezhi. Jian Wushuang gazes at the eyes, and he feels that the old man's breath is far beyond the ordinary Dian immortal, giving an unknown feeling. After seeing the old man's appearance, Yi Qing slowly raised his mouth, and then said loudly, Who should I pretend to be a ghost? It turned out to be the first stray dog under Zhen Wuyang's seat, Changfu. Such terrifying shouts resounded throughout the heavens and the entire Changfu Mountain. Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows, and apparently heard many connotations from his words. It seems that Diqing and Changfu have known each other for a long time, and they seem to have complained. And the younger son was stunned to hear the scolding, and then turned to look at the old man. The old man who was called as Changfu seemed to regard the screams as a fart, but he didn't care. He looked at the son and corrected it, then said slowly, I didn't say that, don't you wake up to this seat before you survive or die. The son knows, but the elders support the elders, and now the whole day is at the time of life and death, the son said with a painful tone. My last details are all slaughtered by them. If I don't invite you out again, I am afraid that even I'm about to lose warranty. The old man heard that did not speak anymore, and looked slightly muddled towards the clear meaning not far away. Take you away and return. This era is not ours anymore. I have no intention of fighting a meaningless fight with you again. The son corrected the news and frowned. Elders help the elders, they can't just let them go. Otherwise, my dead servants can't die in vain. Di Qingqing smiled coldly. Chang Fu, where did your momentum go from now on? How did it become the look of the old hungry old man now? It seems that the old dog with a broken back is not affected by the owner. Jian Wushuang secretly said badly, and once this extremely ironic word came out, I am afraid that everything would be hard to stop. Sure enough, the face of the elder who had never looked good was changed, the long suit on his body began to flutter, and a kind of Wang Gus old breath burst out. Now that His Highness has orders, then Chang Fu finally walked into this one. He said this calmly, with the determination of their time, slowly moving forward. Chapter 48-42. Di Qing also condensed the color of sarcasm, a pair of golden eyes dignified. The reason why he just said the most ridiculous words is after all because of things that were entangled and unresolved in their time. Chang Fu, who belongs to Zhenwu Yang, is very strong, and even strong enough to be able to leave a great reputation in that chaotic era. Although he is strong, Di Qing is also not afraid. Unlike the old appearance that Chang Fu now shows around him, his breath is strong and powerful, like a blaze that is always burning, so that people can't look directly. After the years of baptism and adherence to the essence of the present, it is Zhujuan Dianxian. Chang Fu is also Jiuzhu Dianxian. The battlefield is rallying. Jian Wushuang's gaze also locked the young son correction. He didn't want to fight this battle, but now that the matter was over, he couldn't withdraw. Holding a black sword, the young man straightened and pointed at the sword. Their battlefield was also opened up. At this point, the earth-shaking battle started in Changfu Mountain. A sword came out, and the sword intended to cut off even the void came. Jian Wushuang held out in his food, and then dispelled Jian Yi. The young man's body shape followed, and an indescribable scarlet scroll surrounded him. That was his fairy style. As early as in the battle for the peach in the heavenly realm, Jian Wushuang would appreciate it, extremely powerful. If it were not for Jian Wushuang who finally gained the immortal feeling from the stone beads, it would probably be defeated in his hands. Damn things, don't you anybody want to leave Damien today? The son whispered coldly, as the scarlet scroll spread out, an unnamed swallowing breath quickly eroded his fertility. Because of the inability to use the immortal form, Jian Wushuang was a bit difficult, but was barely able to fight. In the battlefield on the other side, the battle between Qingqing and Changfu is full of the spirit of ruining the world. It seems that the elders who are hungry and old are carrying an overwhelming trend in every blow, and even Qingqing can't get any benefits in his hands. Infinite. A black Wu Bao appeared together, and also carried Zheng Rong to Changfu. The clouds of smoke between heaven and earth are all empty. You are still as sharp as before, no change at all. Yun Yang dissipated. Chang Fu looked at him and said, Di Qing proudly, why should I change? Who can change me? I don't know how many years have passed, are you still looking for? Chang Fu looked at him again. What's with you? Di whispered coldly, your way has long since dissipated, and my way has just begun. Chang Fu heard the words and smiled, it was a blessing to be able to survive in that era, and my Tao is about to die out, but even so, it can be enough to cause you serious damage. Just with you now. What qualifications do you have to say such a thing? Di Qing said in a cold voice, and the opportunity appeared in his eyes. You don't understand this seat, just as this seat still doesn't understand you, Chang Fu slowly said, everything here is my avenue, and it is my foundation, even if your breath is now in me how can you destroy me while in control? Di Qing sneered, then I will destroy your avenue and destroy your foundation. At the end of the speech, he reached out and pushed a total of 3 colors of black, white, and red, and 3 different ancestral treasures emerged, all with a strong momentum, rushing towards Nafu Mountain. However, seeing Changfu, there was no hindrance. Let Qingming's natal treasure sect break the entire Changfu Mountain from the middle position. Along with the sound of Hong Zhongdala's destruction, Changfu Mountain, which connects the heavens and the earth, breaks from it, the sky dome collapses, and the unknown void material surges. Sure enough, you never knew me at all. Changfu said lightly, the reason why I can survive is far from foreign objects, even myself. As long as I don't want to lose, no one can defeat me completely, even Zhenwu Yang is no exception. Bullshit, today you are in my hands, is the best home. Di Ching said. Changfu looked at him, then give it a try. Belonging to Zhu Zhuan Dian Immortal's vigorous efforts, he directly confronted him for the purpose of beheading. But the offensive could not cause effective damage to it. The seemingly weak long support, like a lonely boat in the wind and rain, was stubborn. The two of them fought in this way, causing the sky to fall and the void to vanish. I have a doubt, why do you want to fall under Zhenwu Yang's seat? Di Ching asked. Changfu rode, for the sake of the emperor's luck, but then I realized that that kind of thing is really extravagant. You have followed such a long time, haven't you got even a little insight? No, I can never feel that kind of thing. Yi Qing's eyes showed an unspeakable emotion, but it was quickly covered up. So what's the point of living alive now? I exhausted my final consciousness just to distinguish the difference between annihilation and endless sleep, but now I have a clear understanding, so you can think that I am living to beg for death. Changfu said, I want a strong man who is qualified to accompany me to die together. After hearing the words, he immediately became vigilant. He felt bad, and the old guy was likely to pull him to die together. It seemed that in order to confirm his thoughts, Changfu's breath suddenly surged. Then an unexpected scene appeared. He collapsed directly, escaped from the attack of Di Ching, and came directly in front of Zhen Wushuang, without any warning. The vastness of the extreme force all poured down. At the same time, Zhen Wushuang subconsciously tilted his head to one side. The immortal body can't bear the long strength strike, instantly fragmented and dissipated. The sun was shocked and his figure quickly backed away, and he felt an unknown heart palpitations. Looking at this scene, Yi Qing couldn't believe it. He couldn't understand why Changfu shot the sword Wushuang without warning. Then he was completely furious. S figure came to Changfu in an instant, and he gave him a full palm. Why do you do this? Because, I want to kill all the unknowns that may happen. Changfu's face was more aging, he looked at the meaning of Qing. I traveled through thousands of domains when I was young, and I saw some mysterious warning in one place. That warning is very captivating and weird. It's simply not convincing. But now, I believe a little. Speaking of which, Changfu reached out and held his hand to restrain Di Ching. I use my life to do something in the end. He said that the strength of the whole body began to burn rapidly, and the foundation of the fairy source belonging to Zhou Dianxian was also burning. His mother, how can you dare to support the old dog? Di Ching's eyes were splitting, but everything was silent next. The heavens are completely martyrdom under this indescribable light. Chapter 48-43. This martyrdom was too violent, and it was the last thought of Zhu Zhuan Dian Immortal. It made the entire Changfu Mountain and several heavens easily vanish. 10 celestial fields closer to Changfu Mountain were all affected and instantly turned into scum. The territory is the head of the 7 emperors, sitting in nearly 30 heavens, 17 fairy mountains, and 6 celestial lands, and more than half of them collapsed. Gongzi only felt colic in his heart, and after some unknown years, he carefully annexed and controlled the control of the Demission and the subordinate forces, and it was so destroyed. Suddenly a touch of Yin Hong's blood came out of his mouth, and his eyes swirled around before he was swallowed by the aftermath of Xianyuan's martyrdom. At this point, the vast expanse of heaven, completely into the chaos of death. The martyrdom lasted for 10 days, and hundreds of millions of souls were destroyed, leaving no trace. The broken walls of the broken Tiangong floating in the void, the inexplicable smoke and dust covered all visible objects. The break of the Tianhe River changed the surviving celestial domain of the river channel and caused water disasters. The fierce skyfire also penetrated the void and dragged everything into purgatory. This scene is even more tragic than the northern Tiangxianzhu, which has long been destroyed, because the territory involved is too vast. These are all caused by a drooping old Zhu Xuandian immortal. His last thought was exploded, it was too horrible. Everything is dead. Woo-oh! I do not know how long it has been. A lone and ethereal whine echoed in the void. Immediately afterwards, a long beast, a whole body of snow-white and black dense veins broke through the dust, and while heading forward, he bowed his head and sniffed hard. On the back of the beast, Xiongqi looked anxious, and his clothes were all damaged, obviously affected. With her appearance, Zhao Ting's figure also appeared, carrying Wei Liujia, who had not recovered completely from her injuries. Sanqing, please hurry to me. If I can't find the place where the adult is, I will throw you here directly. Ziqingqi reached out and grabbed the big beast's big ear, hurriedly. Sanqing pleased again, and his eyes were crescent-shaped. Zhao Ting's eyes were dignified. She looked at the heavenly ruins, her expression gradually dimmed. Everything prosperous seems to come to an end. Wei Liujia dragged the wounded fairy body and eagerly searched. He wanted to find the adult who had great grace for him. Give up, under the impact of this power, they will never survive. Zhao Ting sadly, leave it all, everything is irreversible. Shiqing Kai glanced at her, and did not speak, but urged Sanqing to continue his investigation. Wei Liujia coughed, Zhao Tianguan, no matter what, let's find it again. I believe adults will be lucky. With a slight sigh, Zhao Ting continued to explore. Sanqing has a keen sense of smell and rushes in the broken void with the cleaning pond, and soon comes to a smoky place. It twirled in place and turned to look at her, pleased. Shiqing Kai moved in his heart, hurriedly standing in the void, gazing at the smoky place in front of his eyes, and then slowly stretched out his slender palm. At the next moment, a broken blood-covered arm suddenly broke through the smoke and caught her palm. Shiqing Kai froze in place, his body trembled fiercely, and he even forgot to scream. The smoke slowly dissipated, and a heroic and pale cheek appeared. At the moment, his fairy body shattered and nearly fell, but his eyes were still open. He couldn't hold it until he saw that the person before him was washing the pond. After closing his eyes, he fainted again. Suppressing the throbbing heartbeat, washing the pool and stepping back, patted Sanqing. Sanqing felt that although he was a little reluctant, he still held his head high and placed the truth on his back. He's all right, then the adult will be all right. Shiqing Kai comforted himself and continued to search. However, Zhao Ting is not optimistic. She can feel that Jian Wushuang is nothing more than a fairyland. Although the strong ones are too much, they will never survive this martyrdom. In the hazy ghost, he felt that his figure was falling endlessly, everything was away from him. Everything that has gone through seems to have changed into the past. Could I be dead? No, it's impossible. I'm dead for immortality. How can I die? At least now, I can't die. What the heart says, the fairy body becomes. In the broken void covered with smoke and dust, tiny stars rose from the void and reunited continuously, forming a magnificent scene. There are hundreds of millions of stars, like fireflies, connected to each other, and constantly go to where they should go. If you look closely, you can see that in the magnificent stars, sitting quietly in a robe, the figure of long hair flying, and more solid. This fantastic and magnificent scene naturally attracted the attention of Shiqing Kai and others in the first place. Sir, it's great. Shiqing Kai was surprised and then excited. Wei Liujia also saw this scene, looking overjoyed, and hurried forward. The hair fell lightly, and a ray of pure golden orn revealed from the eyes that gradually condensed. The dissipated memories gathered together again, and Jian Wushuang absorbed the first force. His reshaped fairy body showed a magnificent dark blue, as if gathered by stars. A galaxy composed of 7 bright stars surged in Jian Wushuang's eyebrows. Are you alive to death? Interesting. He slightly raised the corner of his mouth, his eyes helpless. Adult, it's so good that you are still alive. Shiqing Kai came first. Might be too excited, and there was a slight red flush on the sides of her cheeks. Jian Wushuang smiled and shook his head. Although the immortal body was transformed into an immortal body transformed from a super-perfect life form to avoid the end of complete silence, this time the situation was different. He was completely destroyed. Chang Fu's blow didn't leave his hands completely crushed into powder, which was the heaviest blow to Jian Wushuang's arrival in this great Yang Huan. He can be sure that if it is not immortality, just under that blow, even if it does not die, it will spend endless years in the void, and there is a possibility of awakening. At the same time, Jian Wushuang was also puzzled. He couldn't understand that Chang Fuhui suddenly broke up without warning and killed him. Isn't it true that Qing is the biggest threat? Now that Chang Fu has completely disappeared, I am afraid he will never know about this problem. Looking at Sanqing lying on Sanking's back with a weak breath, Jian Wushuang breathed out. Qing really didn't die, but looking at the look of him now, I was afraid that another life was removed. Chapter 48-44. Wei Liujia also stepped forward, faced with Jian Wushuang. He was a little embarrassed. Sir. Just alive. He smiled. At this time, Zhao Ting also stepped forward. Dami Tian has been damaged for more than half. I am afraid that it is not suitable to stay here anymore. Let's retreat quickly. Jian Wushuang was a little surprised in his heart, but he looked at Tianhe River's broken stream, and the broken heavens burned by the sky fire. He also understood that Zhao Ting's words were true, and Dami Tian was indeed destroyed by nearly half. But he didn't want to leave here. He knew that once he left, the silver bell carrying a zigzag bone armor would probably never get news again. While Jian Wushuang was hesitant, a huge amount of vigorous force suddenly rose around him. During the smoke and dust, the young man holding the black real sword appeared. At the moment, he is also the end of a strong crossbow, and his whole body is blooded. Destroy me and want to leave alive. Let me die. At the end of his words, the black sword in his hand was madly cut forward, a unique and extremely extreme sword meaning, so that the surrounding void was broken, and even strangling Jian Wushuang. Only after condensing the immortal body, but the sword Wushuang for half a day, and even unable to release the diffractive force completely freely, he withstood more than half of the impact. Ziqingqi and Wei Liujia even passed out, and the only Zhao Ting, who had some background, was also difficult to resist this blow. With the collapse of the void, Jian Wushuang and others all fell into endless darkness. After releasing the blow completely, the sun sighed heavily and gasped, and at the end of the crossbow he had no power to pursue it. After a moment, his figure also disappeared. As the sun left, the void that was originally dead and collapsing appeared again, and even wearing a large black robe could not hide his good posture. If Jian Wushuang is still there, it will certainly be recognized at a glance. This good posture is the silver bell that has not appeared for a long time. She stayed in place for a while, and eventually her figure disappeared. Oh, it's terrible, the big guys are coming to see it. Is it dead in the water? Wow, La Lane. The sound of a clear stream flowing in the ears rang in my ears, and everything was calm again. I don't know how long it took, and the slight itch on the nose made Jian Wushuang barely open his eyes. A ray of sunlight illuminates everything. Then a pink cheek with baby fat came into his eyes. Yeah, you're awake. I thought you'd have to sleep all the time. The pink cheeks opened with a pair of big, smart eyes, and said with a smile. Jian Wushuang strongly supported his aching body, and after looking around the environment for a week, he looked at her again. Little girl, where is this place? Of course it's my house, how can it not be beautiful? The little girl's big and flexible eyes were crescent-shaped, and she seemed to be waiting for praise. This wooden house made entirely of ordinary wood seems to have been around for a long time. Apart from being extremely clean and tidy, there is nothing particularly outstanding. But Jian Wushuang nodded and smiled. It's very beautiful, very similar to the house I used to live in. The little girl sniffed her eyebrows proudly. Hey, this is all done by my brother, he is very powerful. Somehow, looking at the little girl underneath, inexplicably reminded him of the original childishness, and then he unconsciously reached out his palm and wanted to knead her bun. At this moment, a rough voice with tension sounded. What are you doing, Shichun? Hurry up. A young man wearing a coarse linen shirt stood outside the door and looked at him nervously. Jian Wushuang consciously withdrew his hand and smiled guiltily. The little girl seemed extremely dissatisfied and turned her head. He finally woke up, and of course I was taking care of him. Taking a deep look at Jian Wushuang, the young man hurriedly hugged her around. You wake up, hurry and go. The young man looked at him and whispered, I can't leave too many people here. Knowing its meaning, Jian Wushuang nodded. Okay, I will leave now. The little girl stopped immediately. She pushed the young man hard. Li Dachuan, you are the one who did this. This is the task assigned to us by the village. Let us take care of him. Now he has not fully recovered. If you want to catch others, are you not afraid of people in the village poking your backbow? The young man named Li Dachuan also hesitated when he heard the words. He already awake, and our task is not even completed. It's far from finished. You see his injury hasn't recovered. Listen to me, just leave him. The little girl assured her by patting her chest. Looking at the quirky little girl in front of him, Jian Wushuang smiled. I still don't disturb you. I have recovered almost, and I will leave immediately. After he finished speaking, he looked around and found that he didn't wash the body of the pond and others, and asked, dare to ask, have you seen any other people with me? Have seen it, the young man nodded and said plainly, in addition to you, there are 2 men and 2 women, plus a big dog. All of us were fished out of the river and distributed to every household to take care of. Jian Wushuang heard the words and got out of bed to salute him. Thank you for your help. The young man waved his hand. You don't have to thank me. I will save it if someone else falls in the river. My brother is a stupid big guy, he can't understand any good words, just tell me. The little girl said with a smile. Jian Wushuang couldn't help crying and laughing. Okay, I'll talk to you. She was satisfied, and then pretended to be old-fashioned. You have been in a coma for more than half a year. Now that you are awake, I should lead you to find your friends in the village. Before he could speak, the young man preemptively said, let me take you. You reading books www.ukanshu.com. They are not far away. Jian Wushuang did not refrain, and again said, then there is work. The immediate urgency is to find them as soon as possible and then leave here. I want to go with you too. No, you can stay at home honestly for me. Dare to run around carefully, I will come back and beat you. Walking out of the wooden house, facing the sunlight at noon, Jian Wushuang gradually relaxed. This is a medium-sized village inhabited by the river, but there are more than 100 households. There are fishing nets in front of each household, and many dried fish are hung in the air, which is peaceful. The young man named Li Dachuan walked in front of Jian Wushuang, acting as a guide. From time to time, he turned his head to look at Jian Wushuang. His cautious gaze was curious, and he seemed to want to say something, but he was afraid to speak out of some kind of fear. Chapter 48-45. Jian Wushuang looked at his suffocation with a bit of luck, and couldn't help but smile a little. What questions do you want to ask me? May I ask? Are you angry? Of course, not angry. After being affirmed, Li Dachuan seemed unable to hold back anymore, and asked directly, are you a fairy? Are you as powerful as the elders in Qingting Mountain? Jian Wushuang was a little shocked, and then he couldn't laugh or cry. It's a fairy, but it's just a mediocre fairy. I knew you were immortals. Li Dachuan was extremely excited after getting affirmative answers. We were fishing in the river at that time, and it went dark in the sky, and accompanied by lightning and thunder, it can scare individuals. We wouldn't dare to show up in the boat. We didn't dare to come out until the sky was restored, and then we saw you floating in the water. The good guy was breathing fairy. Li Dachuan talked eloquently, but he saw that Jian Wushuang had not spoken all the time, and then he stammered nervously. Many. It's okay, I haven't spoken to other people in a long time, I feel pretty good. Jian Wushuang smiled. Li Dachuan nodded quickly, and he said, I'm sorry, I didn't want to drive you away. I was originally worried that you are bad guys and it will be bad for us, but now it seems that you are all good guys. He looked at Li Dachuan and smiled. Why do I feel like a good person again? Because you don't have any racks at all. It's more peaceful than the fairies in Qingting Mountain here. It must be a good person. Li Dachuan scratched his head and said that his opinion is very simple, so it is so simple to judge that several of Jian Wushuang are good people. Jian Wushuang smiled and did not speak. After his feelings, the strength of the Fangtian domain was very sparse. I am afraid that it is impossible to offer an ancestral top repair. Therefore, those fairy elders in Qingting Mountain in Li Dachuan's mouth are probably not even the top repairs, just some ordinary monks. The villagers in our village, our ancestors lived on the Wei Shui River for generations. All of them were drafters, and harvested by the sky. Although I have no great skills, I can still fill my stomach. If you still need a place to stay for a while, continue to live with us. During the speech, Li Dachuan and Jian Wushuang knocked on the door of the first villager. Zhao Ting had just woke up and was relieved after seeing the coming person as Jian Wushuang. After a simple conversation, Jian Wushuang took Zhao Ting to the next place. Washing the pond, Wei Liujia and the two did not suffer much impact at the last minute, and naturally recovered the fastest. But the truth is clear, but has been in a deep sleep. In line with Jian Wushuang's idea, the power of Chang Fu's last thought really required a true life of Di Qing, which made him unable to wake up. Since Diqing could not wake up, the time of natural departure will be delayed, and they will have to stay in this village for some time. In order not to trouble Li Dachuan and other villagers, Jian Wushuang directly opened a hole in the village not far away, and they temporarily repaired it. After a few months, it passed by again. During this period, Li Dachuan and other villagers delivered fish soup and other fish products on time to ensure that they were not hungry, although they did not know that the fairy had no longer needed food. Zhao Ting is naturally interested in the lack of absorption of the heavenly plane, which cannot be absorbed even by absorption. He just hopes to leave quickly. But the essence cleared the breath more smoothly, showing no signs of waking up. Time continued to fly by, and after Jian Wushuang said that they did not need food, the villagers rarely came to deliver food. But only Li Dachuan, Li Dachen's sister, came back tirelessly in 3 or 4 days. Outside the sky, Jian Wushuang waved his hands and formed a flying bird the size of a finger, giving it to Li Shichun. "It's so beautiful. You have become more tricky than the wood my brother made," the little girl said with a smile and holding Fei Bird. "Can you show me every day?" Jian Wushuang looked at the endless Wei Shui River and said, "I'm afraid I can't, I will leave soon." "It's so fast, can you leave?" "No, I still have a lot to do." Li Shichun bulged his mouth. "Can you teach me, then I will find you and change it for you when I have learned it." Listening to the naive words of this day, Jian Wushuang shook his head. When he just wanted to explain patiently, he found that Li Shishun's eyebrows had a subtle reaction. He moved his heart and pressed his fingers to her eyebrows. After a brief exploration, Jian Wushuang smiled. "Since you want to learn so much, then I will teach you." At the end of the conversation, a ray of quiet and pure energy escaped from his palm, and soon fell into Li Shishun's eyebrows. "Nothing has changed, but everything has changed. I am afraid that it is difficult to cultivate a top cultivation in this plane of heaven with lack of dynamism, but what makes people fool is that in such a direction, there is another genius with excellent qualifications, born with immortal capital, has a very sensitive response to Yang Li. Such a genius is Li Shichun sitting next to Jian Wushuang. When she didn't realize it, Jian Wushuang quietly opened her fairy money and gave her another fairy root. Even if he does everything in the face of this heavenly plane, the situation of lack of strength is in vain, but it is enough to use it as a trick. In Jian Wushuang's view, Li Shichun just wanted to have the ability to change the trick of flying birds. He gave it to her, nothing more. After the sun and the moon circulate, Yu Kanshu www.ukanshu.com stayed awake for another year before he awakened. His immortal body is strong, but the interest is a bit weak. Obviously, he has not fully recovered, but it is enough. It's time they left. "You really want to go, don't you stay longer?" Li Dachuan asked. Jian Wushuang shook his head and smiled. "No, it has been here for several years, it is time to leave. In addition, the cave that I left behind, you and your descendants, in the event of war or natural disasters, can hide inside and will not be discovered by the outside world." After explaining this remark, he patted Li Shishun's little head in the front. "Remember to practice hard, maybe I will come back to check later." Li Shichun nodded heavily. "Well, rest assured, I won't carry it." Except for Li Shichun, everyone present knew that these mysterious fairy people would never come here again. Chapter 48-46. At the end of leaving the plane of the heavenly domain, Jian Wushuang shot a few times to improve some of the rules of the avenue, so that Yanli was derived at a slow speed and developed towards a good situation. Leaving the heavens and traveling through the void, Jian Wushuang already knew that this is not the domain of Demission, and he even left far away. Zhao Ting, who knows the plane distribution of the sky most, is responsible for leading the way. With her guidance, several of Jian Wushuang avoided the chaos like headless flies. Now Da Mitian where she is has been destroyed for most of the time, and together with the sun, Zhao are chasing her. She has nowhere to go, only to follow Jian Wushuang's side. The same is true of Wei Liujia. From the moment he was imprisoned in heaven, he has died of heart, and since then he is no longer the owner of Dagu Mountain, just the Sanxian Wei Liujia. As for the cleaning of the pool, her mission is over. After this series of life and death adventures, fortunately, there is no injury, and Jian Wushuang will naturally send her back. Perhaps he saw his intentions, and Zikingqi became sullen all the way. In the space shuttle that has lasted for several years, too many unpredictable situations have occurred, and the main thing is not completed. He didn't even see Yinling's figure. Even though Jian Wushuang was so unwilling, he had to leave in a sad mood. Such a drastic change in Demission can't stay for a long time, and the heavenly court of Zhenwu Yang will certainly be aware that they can only leave. On the way home, the Shiqing Pond sitting on Sanking's back was in a daze, as if thinking about something. In the end, she seemed to have made up her mind and jumped from Sanking's back. She came to Jian Wushuang and said anxiously, "Master, can I not go back? I still want to follow you." Jian Wushuang heard the words and shook his head directly. "No, it's not my intention to bring you out. Now that things are gone, there is no reason not to let you go back. But I still have things to do, I still want to find my mother." Shiqing Kai whispered to her, "No, let's go back. There are countless outside worlds. Every place is unknown and full of unpredictable dangers. There is a reason why your father won't let you out." Jian Wushuang's voice is full of doubt. Shiqing Kai's gaze dimmed, she dared not refute, and could only return to Sanking's back. He took another look at Sanqing, which has changed so much now. He didn't know what it would be like after so much blood gas was consumed in Beitianyu, but from the moment it seems to be very stable, with no side effects. Only the sound of gang wind roaring in the void. For security reasons, the fairy arrays that can be transmitted between the heavens are no longer used, and they shuttle through the void at a constant speed. Despite taking a lot of detours during this period, he finally found Qingyu. Jian Wushuang personally sent her back to Qingju and back to Zhongmen. Outside the Smoky Mountain Gate, Zikingqi suddenly found the courage to hold him, and then quickly released his palm. "Can we see you again? If there is no accident, you should never see it again." Jian Wushuang turned around and smiled slightly. "This is not a bad thing. You continue to be a young lady in the sect, continue to practice diligently. Your father's behavior is very good, you can try to let him teach you some insights." Speaking of which, he seemed to remember something, and then took more than 10 Depindin pills from his arms and stuffed them into her hands. "You will eat one of these pills every time you reach the bottleneck in the future, which will have a chemical effect. At the same time, you should also remember that these pills should not be exposed, and do not let any monks know, even your father can't tell. Once they are exposed, it will be a disaster for you and the entire sect. Remember every sentence I get, and obey it." Jian Wushuang's eyes were a little dignified. Never a joke. Holding tightly the pill in her hand, she cleaned Kai Zhengjeng's head, and she said softly, "Relax, I know you are good for me, I won't be disobedient." Jian Wushuang nodded, then drifted away. A black robe broke through the clouds of smoke, and soon disappeared like a shooting star. Zikingqi quickly stepped forward 2 steps, but soon she stood on the spot again. If she was lost, her eyes were filled with tears. Sanqing stepped forward and rubbed her palm with her furry head. For a long time, she was ashamed. "Sanqing, do you say that we will never see each other again?" Sanqing raised his head and murmured, not knowing what he was expressing. The dense lines around him were flowing slowly. After sending the Shiqing Po back, he glanced back at this peaceful heavenly field. Jian Wushuang said softly, "Let's go back to the 6 heavenly fields." Di Qing came together in a timely manner, as if his face had recovered from a serious illness, with an imperceptible smile. "Wushuang, I think you have been alone so far, why don't you want to put that little girl as a fairy?" although she has not yet reached Yangxian, but it is indeed a good seedling. Jian Wushuang heard the words, shook his head helplessly, and said such a sentence. Overlooking at the galaxy, the sea, and the red moon, I have already found the star, and I have no longer nostalgia for everything. After he finished speaking, his figure would go ahead. It's really an unpredictable and infatuated guy. Di Qing murmured slightly before moving on. Zhao Ting looked at his figure, a complex flashed deep in his eyes. A group of 4 people, after more than a few months, then finally returned to the 6-day realm. Stepping into this jurisdiction, which belonged to the emperor of the Emperor Xiaozi, Zhao Ting seemed a little worried. She was afraid that the emperor would recognize her. After all, she was a heavenly official under the seat of the emperor and had great power. It was Wei Liujia who had never seen the world before. S gaze looking around the sky's void revealed novelty. The first time Jian Wushuang set foot in the realm of 6 days, his brows frowned slightly. He saw that he was still under martial law, passing the heavens where Yangxian capital is very rare. At this moment, either riding a fairy crane, or Yangxian traveling in 3 or 5 years, no fewer than hundreds of people are on the way. It seems that all are converging in a place. Did the 6th heaven realm have been released? He wondered. But soon Jian Wushuang stopped thinking about these things, and took Di Qing and others directly into Xiaoji Yutian. Shaogushan is as calm and deserted as ever, but the strength is sufficient to the extreme, and it is an excellent dojo for wuzhou practice. However, Ling Jian Wushuang was surprised that none of Chen Qing, Chuanqiu, and Kui Jing were in the hall, and even their respective strengths were weak in the hall, which seemed to have been away for some time. Guessing that they might have been found by the little emperor, Jian Wushuang entered the temple and rested. Chapter 48-47. After sitting in the hall, following the words of Jian Wushuang, Wei Liujia quickly realized that he had taken care of himself. He should remove the wounds in the fairy body in the shortest possible time to avoid leaving cracks. Instead, Zhao Ting looked quite uncomfortable and looked awkward. Seeing her uncomfortableness, Jian Wushuang said quickly, "If you are not accustomed to staying here, you can leave at any time, I will not block it." Zhao Ting heard the words and shook his head. "I don't mean that. I have nowhere to go now. If it wasn't you who helped me to save me, I'm afraid I'm already dead, just. Are you worried that Xiaodijun will discover your identity?" Jian Wushuang asked. She nodded. "A few years ago, as a heavenly official, I once went to heaven with the sun to go to the feast and met with all the emperors. Now I want to think that it is very likely that the sun will recognize me. It's a bit troublesome, I'm afraid you can only continue to transform and change your face." She sighed, "It can only be like this." Just as they were talking, 3 streamers crossed the clouds and rushed into the silent hall. Leading a Yangxian, with a sturdy body, like a towering divine peak, with a tough face at the moment. "Brother Sword, I didn't think you would come back so soon. It seems that you haven't even been there for 10 years. Then there were 2 bodies, one was elegant, and the face was handsome and soft. Although the other figure is quite handsome and elegant, the decayed posture is extremely mixed. 3 figures, 3 Yangxian. They arched their hands at the same time, their eyes showing excitement. Brother Sword, Brother Sword, Brother Sword." Jian Wushuang also left the seat long ago and smiled. "I want to congratulate you too, and each has changed a lot." The 3 of them looked at each other and then laughed. Chen Qingmai flirted and said, "You don't know, Sword Brother, he too take Danwen as sugar jelly all day long, and it is a strange thing not to break through to Yangxian. Brother Chen, you're also embarrassed to say, who nearly choked over 60 bite pills at once?" Chuanqiu quipped. Kui Jing also received the voice at the right time. "If Brother Chun and I helped me, I'm afraid you will be successful." Chen Qing's face turned red. "Hugh wants to fart. I was just in a hurry to control the quality." The original quiet hall, with these 3 living treasures, was suddenly more lively. After chatting with each other for a while, Chen Qing first noticed that in addition to the meaning of Qing, there were 2 figures sitting in the hall. "These 2 are?" Chen Qing asked. Jian Wushuang said, "They were brought back from demission and lived in this little lonely place for the time being." After getting up from the Wu sit, Wei Liujia hurriedly arched his hands. "In the next is the Isan Jesan, the name is Wei Liujia. Zhao Ting didn't speak, but just sat at the same place and nodded. Chen Qing, Chuanqiu, and Kui Jing all smiled, and they naturally heard that Dami Tian was the sun's sight. Later, when Chen Qing was preparing to pull Jian Wushuang to remind him, a Yang Xian came out of the air and entered the palace. Master Sword, Xiao Dijun asked you and the other 6 subjects to go to the banquet today to catch the wind and dust for you. Please take a break and go to Degushan. After speaking, Na Yangxian retreated on his own. Jian Wushuang's brows were slightly frowned. Obviously, after he entered the 6-day realm, the little emperor already knew it, and he even knew how to bring a few people back. Be prepared. Let's go to the banquet together after a short break. Can I not go? Zhao Ting asked. If you don't want to cause doubt, it's best to go with you. Along with the rising of the fairy cloud, headed by Jian Wushuang, a total of 7 figures came to the big lonely heaven, the little emperor's heavenly palace. Master Sword, Xiao Dijun has been waiting for a long time. From the side of the hall, the thin purple robe Yangxian calmly said. Jian Wushuang nodded and took the lead in entering the palace. Brother Jian, I haven't seen you for a long time. The little emperor dressed in extravagant clothing greeted him with a light smile. Please sit down at will. The Tiangong temple is very large, and every Yangxian present at the scene has his own thoughts. Di Qing didn't have a cold for Xiao Dijun, so he sat quietly beside Jian Wushuang and closed his eyes to refresh himself. Although Chuanqiu looked calm, the hatred deep in his eyes was strong. Kui Jing converged with a mixed breath and looked nervous. Wei Liujia was also quite nervous and turned his head sideways, intentionally or unintentionally. Zhao Ting, who had turned into a face, seemed quite calm, and seemed to be a real guest. Chen Qing is still carefree, little emperor, we haven't seen it in some days, and we must not be drunk today. The little emperor sitting on the head smiled. Well, it happened that Brother Jian also returned from demission, and today we will not be drunk. The atmosphere eased, and the plan began to stagger. By Brother Jian, did you find that thing when you returned from Dami Tian? Carrying a wine glass, Xiao Dijun came to Jian Wushuang and sat down to ask. He shook his head. I haven't found it. I'm afraid it will be hard to find it in the future. This kind of thing is in a hurry. Maybe you will be able to come to you soon, maybe. Xiao Dijun said, drinking all the wine out of the glass. Let's talk. How is Da Mission's situation? Jian Wushuang looked at him, and he was informed of everything that happened. When he heard that Da Mitian was almost destroyed, almost all the forces of the sun's correction were destroyed. There was a look of joy in the eyes of the little emperor, but it quickly passed away. This is indeed good news for me. Thank you Zhenxiong for telling me. He smiled. We drink together this glass of wine. After drinking the glass of wine again, the little emperor got up, waved his palm, and a real sword fell into his hands. Brother Jian, your swordsmanship is about to be perfected. Is only one line away from the sword immortal. How about we talk about it today? He said, and then threw the real sword in his hand to Jian Wushuang. Really? Of course, but I have to ask Brother Jian to show mercy. After a simple conversation, the sword held the true sword without 2 hands, and was opposed to the little emperor. The atmosphere in the temple of the entire Tiangong is steep and self-condensed, full of cold swordsmanship. Brother Chen, you have followed the little emperor for the longest time. Guess who will win? Kui Jing looked at Chen Qing beside him and whispered. It's needless to say. The sharp-eyed people saw that the sword brothers won. Chen Qing glanced at him. You know, when we first met the sword brothers, when we discussed kendo, I only walked through the 3 swords in his hands. I'm going, brother sword is so powerful. Of course, you learn a little bit, maybe it's good for you. Chapter 48-48. Di Qing also opened his eyes and looked at it, and then the old was sitting there, closing his eyes and raising his mind. He has never been interested in the results that have been doomed before he even started. A simple argument on the sword will begin in the Tiangong. The little emperor who does not take the sword as his way, will soon converge on the sword way, and even in the ancestor level, he will be able to fight against the sword immortal. Even Jian Wushuang can immediately defeat him by releasing any form of Xinghe Lake, Jenny. But he didn't do it. This is an innocent and elegant sword. No matter who wins or loses, it's just a matter of rising. Swords are spreading like magnificent flying fish, magnificent. Jian Wushuang holds the real sword, only to resist. But the little emperor didn't know whether it was the rise of alcoholism, or he couldn't help it. The energetic swords slashed down vigorously, and even the diffusing power of the air was cut off. The atmosphere became more subtle. Originally a relaxed discussion of the sword, as the little emperor passed by, and the murderous sword intentions raged, all Yangxian present at the scene looked dignified. Chuanqiu had already put his palm on the short dagger at his waist, and he was already light-hearted, waiting for Jian Wushuang to get any trauma, he could burst in an instant. Kui Jing saw the breath of change in spring and autumn, but also dignified, and also pressed the black stick around his waist. Di Qing has kept his eyes closed and nourished himself, and seems not to care about everything that happens outside. Zhao Ting's eyes fluctuated slightly, and he seemed to be planning something. Wei Lujia's face was even more anxious. In his view, Jian Wushuang was forced to retreat, apparently not Xiao Shaojun's opponent. But the two-sided color of the sword is quite calm from beginning to end, even if it is faced with the sword style that emerges from the murder, it is easily resolved. When resisting to 767 swords, the mutation became abrupt. The real sword in Jian was hands without any signs broke into two sections, and Xiao Dijun's powerful sword was also severely cut on his shoulders, smashing its entire peeper bone directly. Chuanqiu and Kui Jing got up directly, but then they were suddenly held by Chen Qing. Don't want to let the sword brothers do something, don't disturb. The atmosphere was dead, and the little emperor seemed to be sober from the drink, and his eyes were shocked. He unconsciously released the sword handle and touched him. Sword, brother, I didn't mean it. Jian Wushuang stepped back half a step, avoiding his palms, and his complexion remained unchanged. It's okay, when it comes to swords, there will be some injuries. After he finished speaking, he reached out and took the soft sword from the bone of the peeper and threw it to the little emperor. I was so overwhelmed with alcohol that I left first. Jian Wushuang turned and left, and drops of blood dropped from his shoulders and printed on the ground. Originally closed eyes and nourishing the mind, Qing Qing opened her eyes and looked at other people, and directly followed Jian Wushuang. Chuanqiu immediately opened Chen Qing's palm and left quickly. Then Kui Jing also left directly. Zhao Ting and Wei Liujia glanced at the little emperor and left. Soon, Chen Qing and some Yangxian guards were left in this huge palace. Little emperor, Chen Qing got up, and his complexion changed slightly. You are too impulsive. Get off. He looked straight at the door of the hall where the hole opened. Chen Qingwei sighed and left without saying much. Heaven is dead. The little emperor's complexion turned from pale to ruddy, and the roots of the palms of his palms clenching the hilt were pale. Damn it. He was furious, and with a real sword, he suddenly chopped the case where Zhen Wei was set aside and overturned it. Damn it. Are you going to take the seat? The little emperor was completely angry, and his face was almost mad. He wielded his sword and overthrew all the plans, making the entire Tiangong chaos. The thin purple robe has been standing behind him, neither blocking nor speaking. A group of things, can't tell who the owner is, when this seat is heir. This seat is Chu Jun, the future emperor of Darciu. A louder anger resounded in the temple of heaven. When his voice gradually weakened, the thin purple robe stepped forward in time and handed a white silk cloth. Your Highness is angry. Little emperor coughed heavily, holding the silk cloth tightly around the corner of his mouth. Sword Wushuang. Sword Wushuang. It. Did you see it? With this one, he didn't even use any swordsmanship. He looked down on me. He didn't even see me from beginning to end. It's not just him alone. Did you see the group of guys he brought back? Did everyone dare to go back to their seats? Especially after I slashed the sword with Wushuang, the group of guys he brought back dare want to do it to me? The thin purple robe has been quietly listening, and at the end, he said quietly, His Royal Highness, you forgot, Jian Wushuang is not your subject, but your friend, you should not govern that subject, put it on him. Even if you want to take the seat. The little emperor's voice was slightly angry. Don't dare, I'm just saying what I should say. Jian Wushuang is not your subject, but a friend. Slender Xiaozi robe finished, looking at him meaningfully. Friend? My son has no brothers, how could there be friends? His voice could not hear any emotions, empty and unknown. I don't know how long after that, Xiao Dejuan turned his head to look at the thin purple robe. Do you know how the real sword in Jian was hands broke? I used my hands and feet to destroy the gentian deliberately before. I made this kind of hands and feet deliberately to win him once. Are you ridiculous? The thin purple robe whispered, Your Highness did nothing wrong, but this kind of percussion can only be used between the subjects. The little emperor said again, Is this sword completely cut off the connection between us? Yes, no. I want to make up, how to do it. Apologize. In the spacious hall, Yu reads www.ukanshu.com has a depressed and dull atmosphere. Jian Wushuangjing sat in front of a case and closed his eyes to refresh himself, as if nothing had happened. Chuanqiu looked cold, and his palm had never left the hilt in his waist. Di Qing sat next to him in the same posture, with some playful meaning in his eyes. It's not like your style of acting. I've accompanied you along the way and figured out your character, but today this scene still made me unexpected. You didn't touch him. Are you afraid of Zhen Wuyang behind him, or are you treating him as a friend? Jian Wushuang opened his eyes. Zhen Wuyang? I have never been afraid for a moment. As for him as a friend, I never even thought about it. This sword is considered to be something he gave me back. Nodded secretly, a guy who participated in the assassination of the 5 emperor's sons, and had a fight with the 2nd emperor's sons. Chapter 48-49. Thinking of it this way, I am afraid that there is only another result, that is, Jian Wushuang still misses some of the emperor's kindness. But now, he has drawn a line in his heart. Brother Jian, no matter what decision you make in the future, I have nothing to say about Chuanqiu. Chuanqiu said with a murderous intent in his eyes. Brother Sword, I am Kuijing too. You only need to send a call, and my entire life will be yours. Kuijing leaned on the pillar, his eyes dignified, and he threw a loud voice. Jian Wushuang heard the words and smiled with his hand. Say what to do so seriously and practice well. Only by constantly improving yourself can we gain a foothold in these countless heavens. Also remember, your life is yours, and it's more important to live a good life. Yes, it's still the brothers of swords who understand the truth. Chen Qing raised his thumb, and then digressed. I just remembered that there was one more important thing that I didn't tell brothers of sword. He glanced at Chuanqiu and Kuijing, and said, Remember when Brother Sword left the 6th heaven realm, did our brother say he wanted to open an auction house? It's already open, so I'll wait for you to come back. It was originally prepared to tell you before, but the result was delayed and forgotten, and now I remember it. Chen Qing scratched his head and smiled. It is better to choose a time. Brother Jian, we will open it then. Jian Wushuang did not shirk. Then half a month later, I think there are already a lot of Yangxian dynasties gathered here. It seems that nothing can hide Brother Jiang. Chen Qing laughed. It's true, we have released a lot of treasures before this, which naturally attracted many Sanxian in the heavenly realm and all Tianzongs. Come here for a while, and wait till the time when we make money. At this time, Di Qing said, You are all Yangxian, and you still care about the so-called currency. Of course I don't care. For our auction house, the transaction with Tianjing is only part of it. The most important thing is the transaction between top-level treasures, which can only be exchanged with the same level treasures. Chen Qing also explained. At this time, even Wei Liujia somewhat understood their intentions. Such an auction house seems to facilitate transactions to draw commissions, but it is not the case. Instead, it exchanges treasure for treasure, which means to include the treasure scattered in the heavens. This chess game is so big that even Wushuang Wushu becomes curious about what kind of behemoth such an auction house will grow into in the future. After going to the banquet, half a month passed by again. In this half-month period, Xiao Dijun sent Yangxian messengers to invite Jian Wushuang to dinner again, but they were directly rejected. After 3 consecutive times, no more messengers came, and Jian Wushuang also fell free, taking a good rest. The half-month's date has come, and when the turbidity alternates, they walked out of the great hall together and out of the little guttian. A total of 7 figures, like 7 streamers, flew towards the void. From the mouth of spring and autumn, I learned that the auction house was not established in the 6 emperor realms of the Little Emperor. Instead, it directly established a whole sky realm as the foundation and established a sky realm auction house. The Tianyu plane that built the auction house was exchanged from the jurisdiction of a Tianzong with a condition that people can't refuse. It contains 6 continental plains. It is also very powerful, and it is a land of fuse. And it is such a heavenly plane, but only one auction house is built, and the luxury is at the extreme. This is not that spring and autumn are too inflated, but that Tianyu is really cheap. He just used more than 20 dependent pills to set the entire Tianyu plane. Regarding how many treasures of pill they took from the former heaven of the 6 Crow Emperors, Chuanqiu counted it before, a total of more than 2,400 pieces, and after giving them to more than 1,000 pieces of Jian Wushuang, they can still use them. There are more than 1,400. This is an unimaginable number, but it is just the tip of the iceberg of the 6 Crow Emperors. This time the Tianyu auction house opened for the first time. It attracted countless Yangxian because Chen Qing had used Depindanwen as a gimmick and released some news, which caused shock. Stepping on the hazy sky of Fangxianyun, as a wave of vigorous power circulates across the body, a vast and clean sky is reflected in the eyes. This kind of celestial field is quite good in the big division, and it is a good enlightenment dojo. Thousands of ancestor-level repairers and Yangxian have already gathered in this heavenly domain. They have entered a magnificent heavenly palace one after another, which is quite spectacular. I have a hunch that our auction house will open the market for the first time today, and it will definitely make a name for itself. Chen Qing was quite excited. Jian Wushuang, who was at the forefront, smiled slightly. Look at it first. It wasn't until he entered the auction house like Tiangong that Jian Wushuang could not clearly see the 7 characters. Everything is unique. This name is a bit. Brother Sword, don't care about the details. This is the name our brother took after discussing it. Isn't it very domineering? Guided by the maid to enter the auction house, Jian Wushuang was slightly surprised. The Heaven Palace, which is almost stacked by various precious jade, is extremely brilliant, and is divided into 3 layers with strict order. The Yangxian and Dingxiu sent from the ordinary sect were seated on the first floor, and some hidden sects or Tianzong across several celestial realms were placed on the second floor. As for the third floor, it was only divided into 2 spaces, one of which belonged to Jian Wushuang alone, and the other was given to a guest with an extremely distinguished status. As for the so-called distinguished guest, Chen Qing did not conceal, it was the son of the clan in the Super Tianzong, who sold this Fang Tianyu. Jian Wushuang didn't have a cold about it. The reason why he came here was to take a chance and see if he could come across any treasures that didn't come out of the world. With the continuous entry of Yangxian and Dingxiu, and the final seating, the atmosphere of the quiet auction house finally warmed up. Sitting on a chair made by Nuan Yu, Jian Wushuang was rather uncomfortable overlooking the center of Shangtian Palace. Chen Qing and 6 others sat in turn on Jian Wushuang's body, all ready to start. The entire auction house's palace was built by the overall planning of the spring and autumn period. For a time, Jian Wushuang also looked at him a bit. With the invitation of Yangxian all gathered, just as the hall gatekeeper closed, there were more than 10 streamer figures directly breaking into the hall, completely ignoring the rest of Yangxian's gaze. Each of these 11 bodies is Yangxian. Like the stars arching the moon, it brings out a body dressed in extravagant clothes. Chapter 4850. The figure in extravagant clothes, with an arrogant look and a lazy standing, was more sloppy than Kui Jing. After entering the hall, the 10 Yangxian manipulated the strength, and stepped into the air to lift it to the 3rd floor. Such a scene drew uproar. While on the 3rd floor, the figure in extravagant clothes glanced at Jian Wushuang and others, with a trace of disdain in his eyes before sitting down. Upon seeing this, Kui Jing suddenly gave a sigh of relief. Yeah, really fucking, if it weren't for this kid, then 15 pills in this domain could be won. Chen Qing also said, "Sooner or later, I will sort out this kid, and I was so troubled that I wouldn't come to Taiwan." Jian Wushuang waved his hand. "Okay, concentrate on the auction. Are you going to carefully select these things that are about to be auctioned?" Chuanqiu nodded. "There are a total of 60 lots, including 20 Depindan Maru, and the rest of the lots are some of the treasures I picked that are not too practical. Release so many Danmaru, if some Tianyu sect's minds are out of order." Jian Wushuang was worried. Chuanqiu smiled slightly. "Brother Jian, you can rest assured that I have dealt with it before this, intentionally or unintentionally. We have done some involvement with our auction house and Shaodijun. Even if other Tianyu ancestors look at it again, they will have to weigh it." "Weigh?" Jian Wushuang nodded and stopped talking. He understood what Chuanqiu meant, and it was a fake to be involved with Shaodijun, but the borrowed name was true. For this abruptly built and powerful auction house, it seems that it can only be linked to the emperor of Zhenwu. With the gradual declining discussion, a woman with a beautiful face and body, both beautiful in face and shape, came to the center of the temple. "The women I have found are all fairy celestial candidates, and their work abilities are first-rate," Chen Qing proudly said. Next, as Chen Qing said, the fairy gave a concise but full-text opening speech, which completely stirred up the atmosphere of the entire auction house. "Masters, today's first lot is called Liu Yun Ming Dan, and its effect is infinitely useful, so that the owner can deepen the perception and capture of the avenue in a specific heavenly plane, but you must remember this: Dan, the pill is not taken internally, but worn on the body. The initial price of Liu Yun Mingdan is 60,000 Montenegro spar. Of course, Tianjing is also available. The initial price is 60 million Tianjing." As the fairy's voice fell, a 6-color rainbow shadow of the pill was hovering in the air. Even if it was through the crystal jade box, it seemed to reveal the fragrance of medicine. Such a so-called Liu Yun Ming Dan, in Jian Wushuang's eyes, is a chicken rib, but in ordinary Dingxiu or Yangxian, it is an invaluable treasure. And it is not a one-time treasure, which can be passed down, and the preciousness has suddenly deepened several grades. Immediately afterwards, the sound of competing for the price was resounded. 60 million Tianjing, 70 million Tianjing, 90 million Tianjing, a louder than ever sounded, and soon raised the price to nearly 500 million Tianjing. Jian Wushuang also noticed some problems. That is, these Zhongmen Yangxian bidding only used Tianjing, and none of them used Montenegrin crystal bidding. Perhaps seeing the doubts in Jian Wushuang's eyes, Chuanqiu quickly explained, "For these Tianzongs, the Black Mountain Spar was originally a spiritual resource, and the pureness of the derivation stored in it was not comparable to that of Tianjing. And Tianjing's mass production is extremely large, and the diffusive power contained in it contains impurities. Almost every heavenly domain is produced. Only Montenegro spars are produced in the next 3 days, so the value between the two cannot be discussed. To put it simply, Montenegro crystal is a spiritual resource. Tianjing can be regarded as an ordinary currency, and it is not a treasure at all, so they will only use Tianjing for bidding." Jian Wushuang nodded and realized. It was in this emptiness that the 6-luck destiny finally settled with 1.3 billion Tianjing. The first piece of Jidan pill is handed over, and the following treasures are presented in sequence. These precious treasures are usually rare when they are seen, but in this ancient auction house, they are pushed onto the countertop very quickly like a horse and a flower, and only need to pay Tianjing. This is a great benefit. For a time, all the Yangxian and Dingxiu in the temple were vigorously bidding, trying to take back a treasure. After learning that all the lots were selected by Chuanqiu and others, Jian Wushuang became interested in the lack of it. But soon, in a somewhat frantic atmosphere, when the lot went to the 20th lot, a fairy came to the 3rd floor and came to Chuanqiu. "Senior Chun, only one Yangxian came to visit and presented a treasure to ask us to take it off, and then the commission can be divided into 5 or 5. There is such a good thing." Chen Qing could not help but take the lead. "What is the most treasure?" The fairy looked up for a moment and said, "It seems to be a jade head. It's not very real." "Yes, after confirming that the lot is correct, you decide for yourself." Chuanqiu nodded. "Yes, where is that Yangxian now?" "Just below," the fairy said, pointing down with his finger. But there were nearly 1,000 Yangxian and Dingxiu sitting underneath, and they couldn't tell which one, so Chuanqiu just glanced a little at it and then exposed it. After another Jipindan pill was settled at the price of 6 billion tianjing, the fairy in charge hosted a round object wrapped in black cloth. The huge auction house suddenly calmed down, and all Yangxian was staring at that item. Apparently, the fairy was also told to take this thing temporarily. After a moment of stun, he said, this thing is also a treasure, but it doesn't seem to have been told about its effectiveness. It should be one very good treasure. Having said that, she simply reached out and lifted the black cloth on the round object. Immediately, a jade head with closed eyes and medium and long hair appeared in the eyes of every Yangxian. This is a head carved by some kind of Wenyu. In addition to being vivid, I am afraid that even the shadow of the most precious treasure will not be touched. This object is a special lot in this field. Only Montenegro spar can be used for bidding. The starting price is 60,000 Montenegro spar. The vast palace fell into an inexplicable death, and a moment later the soft boos sounded, all Yangxian boos. For this successive auction of treasures, the sudden appearance of such a useless jade head is simply a rat shit, which has broken the appetite of Yangxian and Dingxiu. Even Yangxian sent by Zhongmen began to wonder whether the next lot had high value as always. Chapter 4851. The fairy in charge is also a little embarrassed. Even from her eyes, this is basically a useless and wonderful thing, and can only be bid with the Black Mountain crystals. Except for the auction, I am afraid that no Yangxian will do it. Photographed it, stupid thing. Just as the jade head was about to be dismissed, a calm voice rang in the temple. 60,000, all Yangxian, including the host fairy, subconsciously looked at the place where the sound was made. It is the third floor, the most distinguished third floor of the entire Vanguard Musu auction house. And it was Jian Wushuang who shouted 60,000. At this moment, he looked at the jade head calmly. He didn't rise on a whim, but he only thought about the price after a moment, and he had a strange feeling that he could not tell the truth. Spring and Autumn, Chen Qing and others heard the Jian Wushuang's offer, although they were a little surprised, but they quickly calmed down. They knew that Jian Wushuang wouldn't be aimless. Since they were to be photographed, they might have noticed the beauty. Just as Spring and Autumn was about to leave, a lazy voice sounded. 100,000. The fairy who was originally relieved was inexplicably nervous again. The jade head that had been sold suddenly was photographed and began to bid again. This was what she had not thought of, not only that she had not thought of it. Xian and Ding didn't expect it either. They all looked at the fool's expression and looked up. 200,000. Jian Wushuang's voice was indifferent, and he directly reported double the price. But then the lazy voice also sounded. 400,000. The hall began to commotion, and the expression of the fool on his face had solidified. With a bid of 400,000, I am afraid that even one of the domains, Tianzong and Tianzong, will not have this inside. You know, it is a Black Mountain spar, and its mass production is so terrible that the circulation is very few in all heavens. But the next moment, a more crazy offer began. Jian Wushuang's voice was indifferent, and he doubled the price, 800,000. 100, 600,000. The lazy voice became a bit of a bite, bursting out such a string of numbers. The hall was dead, and then completely disturbed, and all looked up at the third floor in disbelief. The look of the fool in their eyes all disappeared, replaced by shock. Jian Wushuang's brows were slightly frowned, and then a string of light figures completely silenced the hall. 3 million. All Yangxian and Dingxiu swallowed their throats together, unable to organize their language. The fairy responsible for hosting, after hearing such a series of unrealistic figures, all felt the vainness of footsteps. The value of the 3 million Montenegrin crystals is immeasurable, because no one you have done has seen so many Montenegrin crystals. Holding the heartbeat that jumped out of his throat, the fairy subconsciously changed from the original one-handed support to two-handed embracing, fearing that he would bruise the jade head if he missed it. Adult of the bidding, this item is a special item in this field. You can only use the Montenegro crystal to bid. Jian Wushuang is still calm. I know, it is 3 million Montenegrin crystals. Gutter. All Yangxian were horrified. And this time, there was no more bidding next door, but a loud and corrupt voice came. His mother, I want to see if you have the ability to take out so many black crystals, if I don't strip you alive skin. Jian was two-faced fierce coldness, as well as Chen Qing's face, all changed. At the next moment, a powerful kick kicked all the enchanting enchantments in the middle, and the guy was about to break the wall. Fuck, Laro Tsu now peels your skin alive. Chen Qing drank angrily, straightening up his sleeves and preparing to meet him. Chen Qing, don't get into trouble, Jian Wushuang said. The auction house has just risen, and it is not appropriate to move here. Chen Qing heard the words and gave up the plan to rush past, just glared at the junction. Only after kicking 2 or 3 feet, it seems that he has exhausted his anger, and there will be no more noise there. It's really noisy, if not here. I want to crush the guy with one finger. Di Qing shook his head with dissatisfaction. Subsequently, Jian Wushuang looked at Xiong Chuanqiu. The spring and autumn festival grasped the enlightenment, and directly carried a light ring with glowing light, and drifted forward to the fairy. Master Chun, there are only a lot of Montenegro crystals in it, you can just look at it. Chuanqiu put Naji in her hands, and then walked away without hesitation. With a skeptical attitude, she put a ray of consciousness into the vigilance. When she converged, she was completely shocked. Chuanqiu didn't lie to her. The Montenegrin crystals in the Nawan are not enough to be measured by numbers, but by calculation. This unpretentious jade had finally settled at the sky-high price of 3 million whole Montenegro crystals, which is almost predictably the highest price in this auction. It is impossible for the following treasures to exceed this price. This inexplicable sky-high price auction directly made WNGU Wushuang Auction House, an auction house based on the heavens, deeply imprinted in the mind of each coming Yangxian or Jianxiu. The price of 3 million Montenegro crystals. If you get 50% of the commission, you only need to pay 1.5 million crystals to get this jade head back. Chen Qing, who had a concept for the crystal of Montenegro, had a painful face, but a few people in Jian Wushuang looked indifferent. After all, the Montenegrin crystals in the Naji are too much and almost impossible to consume. After the sky-high auction, the subsequent treasures were auctioned in turn. I don't know if it is affected by hyper-emotional emotions. The next treasure is no exception, and the prices are all taken to an outrageous level. It is an ordinary Jipindan pill, which has been called the price of 3 billion tianjing. Although the mass production of tianjing is extremely rich, but using billions at a time can still make one side tianzong hurt. A total of 61 treasure lots, with the passage of time, the last piece, Jipindan Maru, named Feng Tianzhoi, was auctioned at the price of 6.7 billion tianjing, and the auction feast lasted nearly 5 days. Hundreds of billions of tianjing have been accumulated together, high enough to suffocate Yangxian. The first auction of Van Gogh Wushuang Auction House ended successfully. Tianzong, who was able to return with his treasure, was only a very small part. With this grand occasion, standing on the top floor, looking at the Yangxian who were leaving below, the corners of his mouth slowly raised an arc. To them, tianjing is nothing but rubbish, and it is almost useless. However, all the treasures can be exchanged with tianjing for the entire auction. This is just a good temptation to open up the export monument. The beginning of the next auction is the real treasure. Chapter 4852. Such an auction feast is like a gluttony warming up before the big mouth opens. There are more than 2,000 Dipindan pills, but now only a few 200 or 300 are consumed. There are 100 of them in Jian Wa's hands. There are more than 1,000 remaining in the hands of spring and autumn, even if only a small part is needed. How many Tianzong's best-of-breed treasures can be exchanged for? At that time, the treasures accumulated by the Vanguard Warriors auction house will be the true Vanguard Warriors. After one bit of Yangxian or Ding Xiu left in turn, the sword with both hands standing on the top floor looked at this scene calmly without double colors. The Tianzong Yangxian who photographed the most treasures, I am afraid that whether they can bring the treasures back is an unknown number. As the auction ended, the distinguished guest on the third floor flew out and deliberately came to Jian Wushuang. 11 Dao Yangxian, the diffusive power emitted is extremely impressive. For a time, the two sides confronted. Jian Wushuang was obviously interested in him, and he didn't even want to speak. The young man in extravagant clothes, with an arrogant look, looked up and down at Jian Wushuang, then stared. "I sent it you who bid with me just now?" "It's me." Jian Wushuang glanced at him calmly. "What's the matter?" As soon as he twitched his mouth, he put his hands on the jade belt around his waist and said, "Give me the head of the jade, and I will pay 60,000 for the price." "Your mother is okay." Chen Qing sighed angrily, and took a step forward, with a height-type body that was extremely oppressive, as high as Shenfeng. "Even if you are the crown prince of immortal domain, here I have to confer." The young man looked cold and looked at Chen Qing without fear. "You deserve to talk to me like this. Who do you think you are? You know that even Gongzi Yang wouldn't dare to talk to me like that." Just as Chen Qing was about to break up and slay the killer, a lightly contemptuous voice resounded throughout the giant hall. "Oh, is it?" The young man was startled, and turned slowly. "I saw a little emperor who changed into a plain suit, carrying his hands and slowly stepping into the air, followed by several purple robe Yangxian behind him. Xianyun is circulating, it seems that all are surrendering." Although his face was extremely beautiful, it did not affect the heroic momentum of Yingwu at all. It was the temperament of the master who didn't even show it deliberately, so he captured the extreme. The pupils shrunk and a cold sweat emerged from the young man's temples. The little emperor just stood with his hands on his shoulders, and even just showed a warm gaze, so that the surrounding space seemed to stagnate. After calming down from the initial panic, the young man bowed to salute. "Xian Yuzhang, Zhongshen have seen the little emperor." "Did you just say that I dare not talk to you like this?" Xiao Dijuan asked with his hands on his back. Zhongshen Wen said that he hadn't spoken yet, and a Yangxian who looked like a strategist behind him hurriedly said, "My son has no intention of this, but he doesn't choose what he says." Without saying a word, the thin purple robe behind the little emperor fell directly under his palm, smashing his fairy body with the fairy sauce. Killing Yang Yang with a breath, the thin purple robe returned. "For you." Little emperor looked at him. Zhongshen returned to God, and his attitude became panic. "When I returned to the little emperor, I had no intention of that. I really only said nothing, and forgive sins. Because your attitude is good, Shenyu will not be in trouble, let's go." Xiao Dijuan said quietly. Zhongshen nodded again and hurriedly left. Then, Xiao Dijun came to Jian Wushuang and said with a smile, "Brother Jian, I'm sorry to be late. I was not able to watch this auction event with you." "It's okay, I watched while I was doing nothing, and I will not accompany you." Jian Wushuang smiled slightly, and then left. Chen Qing then scratched his head and said, "Don't think about it, little emperor. Sword brothers are definitely in a bad mood now. After all, they were bitten by that dog thing, and they have no good mood." The little emperor nodded, because that chapter shone in the fairyland. Chen Qing nodded, and then roughly said what happened before. After listening, the little emperor's face was slightly cold. What a good second ancestor, his fairyland is really more and more amazing now. "My partner, besides Zhongshen, how many children are there besides Zhongshen?" The thin purple robe whispered, "His Royal Highness, only Zhongshen is the only son." Since this is the case, Jian Wushuang, who left Xiaodijun, walked in front of the presiding fairy, and under her guidance, went to Piandian to take the jade head. When I saw that jade head again, even across a crystal cover, Jian Wushuang once again felt the strange feeling. I don't know what kind of jade head is made of jade. Although it is exquisite, it seems that it has gone through the devastation of countless years and has become scarred. But even with scars, the perseverance and ease of light in the eyes are still very touching, making the viewers feel willing to bow down. Jian Wushuang didn't know who exactly carved this jade head, but what is certain is that this person must be a hegemon in a certain era. He looked closely, and seemed to be able to feel something general from the eyes of Yusho. Even he didn't realize that, unconsciously, a seven-star galaxy in his eyebrows began to flow slowly. One pair of eyes is full of vitality, and the other one emits perseverance, as if gazing at each other through time and space. Why do I have a very familiar feeling? Withdrawing his gaze, Jian Wushuang carefully took away the jade head and placed it in the bowl of the young bottle, before breathing out. Immediately, he carried away Qing Qing, Zhao Ting, and Wei Liujia and left the Wngu Wushuang auction house. Chuan Qiu and Kui Jing stayed here because they wanted to sort out all the Tianjing obtained by the auction house today. Everything seemed to pass smoothly. Damn waste, dare to kill my left arm and right arm in front of this seat. Is this looking at me and seeing the entire fairy field as nothing? Between the fairy clouds, there are 10 streamer-like figures flying upwards, and the first figure is impressively that of the fairyland. At this moment, he is grumpy and very angry. The sun is now cautious, now it is still the domain of the little emperor. A middle-aged Yangxian behind him touched the virtual sweat on his head and reminded in a low voice. It's in his jurisdiction. This is clearly the jurisdiction of the whole fairyland. Zhongshan gritted his teeth. I never imagined that the master of this side of the realm would actually become a son of Yanzi. Really let this son him not upset. Chapter 48-53. He took another bite. If he knew at the beginning that his son Yang was going to buy this side of the heaven, I wouldn't sell it to him if I broke it. Speaking of which, Zhongshan seemed to have thought of something again, glancing back at the 9 remaining Yangxian behind him. Don't say anything about the heavenly domain sold to Gongxian. If that person knows it, our entire universe will be overwhelming. Go back and discuss with my father to see if we can bring this heaven back. The middle-aged Yangxian heard the words and reminded him anxiously, the son is not allowed, we can't afford it, this little emperor, we can't afford it too, as long as he is still a little emperor, we can't talk to him confrontation. There was a flash of anger in Zhongshan's eyes, and he slapped him directly, vigorously, and slaps. His mother, are you the son of immortal realm or am I? When can you refute my idea? Middle-aged Yangxian held her cheeks and kept promises. Zhongshan just stopped, and he fell into contemplation again. I said that Chen Qing had gone to his father to buy Tianyu. Where did so many Jipindan Maru come from? In this way, I have to inform His Highness II and let him decide early. He stared, and he had made a decision in his heart. At this moment, a light voice sounded like morning bells and drums without warning. Who do you want to notify? Zhongshan's eyes suddenly fell, and he operated his body's strength almost instantaneously. Subsequently, several figures appeared in front of him. The leader is the little emperor. His pupils shrunk to the point of a needle in an instant, and his sweat was far more than he had just shed. Now the little emperor appears, apparently listening to all the words he said before. But Zhongshan was still struggling with his final struggle. No one was notified, you must have heard it wrong. Little emperor smiled slightly, the expression in his eyes was unclear. How could I have heard it wrong? Your second highness in your mouth, should the prince correct it? Zhongshan stood for a while and waved his hands again and again. No, it's not. Our fairyland is very far away from the grandson of the young son. How can we get to know the young son? I am also very curious. It is clear that your fairyland is closest to my 6-day realm, but why would you want to be connected with the distant Domitian? Why should you scramble to be the dog that his son corrected? Little emperor slowly moving forward, said softly. Zhongshan was forced to retreat step by step. Cold sweat continued to shed. Little emperor, these are definitely misunderstandings. My fairyland has never had any contact with Domitian, and there are no half letters. The little emperor heard the words and asked 3 times in a row, you said, should I believe you or should I not believe you, and how should I believe you? Zhongshan was very happy in his heart. Since he said so, there was still a turning point in the matter. Little emperor, you can rest assured that my fairyland is all up and down. I only want to follow you. When I go back this time, I will definitely mobilize my father and align with Lutian realm forever. That's a good word, but how can I be sure that what you said is true? What if you still go your own way after you go back? The little emperor shrugged. So, for the sake of insurance, you still stay here, don't go back, that's it. As his words fell, Shu Qing Chen Qingao behind him smiled slowly and stepped forward. When Zhongshan's heart sank, his hand accumulated a vigorous effort. Follow me to kill. He suddenly sipped, and the beam of majestic force glanced directly towards the little emperor. However, A tangled real sword directly broke his offensive. In Chen Qing's eyes, the murderousness emerged, and he held up the real sword and began a swift beheading. At the same time, the 4 Zipao Yangxian also set off and went around Zhongshan. The 9 Yangxian brought by him even had time to resist, and under Chen Qing's rush, the formations were dispersed, and then they were defeated one by one. These Yangxian only came to the position of Yangxian soon, and the fairy roots were only stable. How could it be Chen Qing's opponent who is about to enter Dianxian? However, under several rushes, there were only 2 Yangxian left under Zhongshan. One sword shattered one of the immortal sources of Yangxian, and Chen Qinggao smiled and came to him like a killing god. Zhongshan was already ashamed, but he never thought of it. These brought him almost all of the immortal level of the elders in the fairy field. They could not get out of 10 rounds under the little emperor. He has already retired, and the last middle-aged Yangxian beside him, whose body is shaking like sifting chaff, has lost even the most basic thinking ability. Looking at the scene in front of him, Zhongshan threw himself directly in the clouds. Little emperor, please let me go. As long as I can go back, the entire fairy field will definitely be cast into your seat. The little emperor came to him slowly, with a soft sword in his hand. Tongue sticks out. Zhongshan, who was begging for mercy, did so subconsciously. Then he felt a cold in his mouth, and then blood spewed out, and he even cut off half of his tongue. Some words should be said, some words can't be spoken. You humiliate me and don't let you die, so I only need half your tongue to mention you. Zhongshan repeatedly bowed, murmured in his mouth. But you provoke people who are not supposed to provoke, which is enough to be fatal. The little emperor said, with a soft wave in his hand. A good head was cut off, even with broken Xianyuan. The eyes that had turned grey were full of puzzles. Zhongshan didn't know who he was causing. Throwing Zhongshan's head to Chen Qing on the side with a sword, Xiao Dijuan said, "Bring this head to Brother Jian to make him happier." Oh, I must explain to him that Zhongshan's head was cut by my own hands. Chen Qing nodded with a smile. I understand the little emperor, you want the Bo Jian brothers to embrace. Little talk. Xiao Dijun withdrew his soft sword, and said softly, Brother Jian and I are brothers. Bullying him is bullying me. Zhongshan is not sorry. If it is the next Zhongshan, I will kill him. Chen Qing nodded and said, Right little emperor, this chapter Shen is the only son of the sect master of the celestial realm. You just killed him in this way. I am afraid that there will be someone to send him to question. Everywhere is a running dog fairyland. I think destroying them is just between hands. The reason why they keep them still is my moving heart. If they dare to send someone to inquire about Zhongshan's news later, it also happens to be a good cause. I will kill all Tianzong in Immortal Realm at that time, so as to deter all the guys who want to follow the sun to correct. Let them understand who is the master. Chapter 48-54. He looked at the fairy cloud in the distance again. Dai Tian, who is corrected by the sun, is now in chaos. It seems that it is time for me to move. Immortal Yunyao, although Jian Wushuang had put the jade head in his pocket, he was still thinking about where the strange feeling came from after he looked at the jade head before. Did we know each other for a long time? Jian Wushuang quickly shook his head again to deny that he has practiced so far, but he hasn't even reached the tens of millions of years. The old friends he knows are now in the divine universe. This Dian Huan is brand new and unknown to him. Only Xian Yi and Lao Zun will be here. During this period of time in Darciu, Jian Wushuang has been completely determined that Xian Yi and Lao Zun must be in Dianhuan, and only here. Because Dianhuan is too vast, and its tolerance is so unimaginable. The inextricable links they left before all point to the only ultimate, Dianhuan. Convergence of mind, the 4 figures steadily shuttled above the clouds. Just then, a figure attracted Jian Wushuang's attention. It was a figure wearing a large black robe, moving forward at a constant speed. Jian Wushuang just glanced back, and then returned his gaze. After all, there are not many Yangxian shuttles in the ordinary sky, but they are all in a hurry. But soon, after experiencing a constant flying distance, he found something was wrong. The figure in the robe has been hanging not far away, neither close nor far away, strangely incomparable. Then, Jian Wushuang suddenly thought of something. On the way to the auction house auction, a mysterious person presented a jade first auction. Due to time constraints, no one cared about the appearance of the mysterious man who presented the jade head. Could it be that the mysterious person is the black robe in front? Jian Wushuang groaned, suddenly having a strong intuition. It should be him. As Jian Wushuang thought, his figure also burst up and flew away. Strange to say, he thought together and reached behind the black robe in a flash. He wanted to reach out and touch, but was shocked that he couldn't touch his coat. Where is the small crumb, dare to touch my prestige? A deep cry was like the thunder of 9 days, resounding in Jian Wushuang's ears. However, Jian Wushuang was not afraid. With a swing of his arm, he threw out hundreds of vigorous strengths and practiced, blocking the way of the black robe. Then, the black robe really stopped, facing back to the sword Wushuang, and his voice was deep. Small detritus, why should you stop me? I really don't want to stop you, but I just want to prove one thing, Jian Wushuang said loudly. Is the jade head in the ancient Wushuang auction house yours? The black robe continued to say in a deep voice, how is not it? The younger generation of crumbs should not delay the journey of this seat. In this case, Jian Wushuang shrugged, and then burst without any signs, then I will try your weight first. A little light circulated from his fingertips. A little mountain and river, both out. From the clouds, the sky covered the sky, blocking his way, and at the same time, there were countless meteor-like skyfires, which fell down. Another turbulent tianhe swept up and swallowed the black robe. This is the fairy style of Jian Wushuang, as long as you can call all mountains and rivers in the field you want, and after the great battle, the fairy style has changed a lot, and you can call out any the power of what you think is doubled. Jian Wushuang stood on the spot, watching the world changes in the field, calm and incomparable. He didn't seem to worry about the safety of the black robe. After a while, Yunshu took a rain break, and a terrible suction like a whale sucked all the world's changes. And that suction vortex was made out of the black robe. Her, the younger generation, the little skill of carving insects. The black robe shape easily merged all the changes into a projectile size, and then shot at Jian Wushuang. His eyes narrowed and he immediately resolved. Only this time, Jian Wushuang intuitively felt that the black robe was not easy. And the black robe did not seem to be irritated by him, and did not take the next step. The crumbs are small. Since you got the jade head, you are destined to me. I will mention you a few today. Some things are far beyond your understanding. This is the level you shouldn't touch. It's too late to return it, so as not to regret it later and be unable to return to the sky. Jian Wushuang heard and said nothing, but stared at the black robe with no features. What the are you, and what do these words mean? What do you mean by all means that you already know? Some things should not be handled by you, but you have already entered the game and caused everything to fall into the unknown. The black robe figure said here, and he will not continue to talk about it. Jian Wushuang, who heard these words, was already stunned, and then hurriedly said, Who the are you and who sent me to tell me? Xian Yi or Laro Zun? Xian Yi or Laro Zun? The black robe was silent. Scrap, young man, I don't know what you mean. What I have done now has no meaning. You can listen or not. We were originally in the same water, and it doesn't make any sense to say more. Don't delay this day our seat. He said, and turned to leave. Jian Wushuang returned to God and said loudly, Can you tell me where you are going? The black robe stopped at the same place, turned his back to him, and left the last sentence. I lived in Yang from the east. Then, he disappeared. The whole figure was like a plume of smoke, scattered in the fairy cloud and disappeared. Jian Wushuang murmured to himself, I passed Shangyang from the east capital. Dongju, Shangyang, these are the names of Tianyu, or do they have other meanings? What are you foolish about? Have you been shattering your thoughts here? Di Qing's voice was like a big hand, pulling him back to reality. Huh? That's wrong, why am I still here? We haven't left yet. He was shocked, and he stepped back half a step, looking fixedly at the front. I saw it in the front, the jade head was still quietly placed in the crystal cover, and the jade eyes showed perseverance and free light. It is still in the partial hall of the auction house. The names of Qingqing, Spring and Autumn, Kui Jing, Zhao Ting and Wei Liujia all stood behind Jian Wushuang, all looking at him with doubtful eyes. Haven't I ever left? What happened just before that? You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.